screen, full screen presentation. I do not see the chat comments or questions. So if there is anything that pops up, if you guys can let me know. Thank you. Hey, Kimberly, nice to see you again today.
Clean and I'll be on video for a little bit, but I have to hop off for a couple calls.
No problem. Thank you for joining us again.
Oh, I'm loving this. I just didn't want Anton to think that I'm always dirty.
Yeah, we had a bunch of people try to join last night, and I was like, yeah, you guys are a little off.
By like 8 hours.
I figured if I sent the meeting request, there wouldn't be any mistakes, but we still managed.
And with all the posts we put, all the different time zones, people still get it wrong. Wow.
Different time zones, meeting to the calendar, and there's still people that got it wrong, but that's just life. That's how it goes. That's why communication is so important.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that your topic for today? Was that the teaser? Communication is so important.
I have a suspicion that there will be plenty of communication talk from V.
Good. Good.
All right. So Anton, do you want me to just take it from the beginning? Do you want to do an opening brief comment?
Oh, you take it all, man.
Okay.
And so Anton, I also do the timing for the first two things for Kevin's intro and for the panel, and then Kevin will take over for me when I'm presenting.
Cool.
Yeah, I've got my handy dandy schedule right here.
And you notice I'm not doing timing, folks, is because they don't trust me with that. They said it's for
Oh,
only adults can keep time.
You have to watch for complicated equipment around Anton. You know.
Exactly. We all have our
Clocks and all that.
Well, theoretically, we should have a number of more people. I know that I've been personally communicating with some folks that seem to have a hard time with things. And
did you drop that Zoom link in the event?
Oh no, let me do that now.
Grab a Zoom link and put it in there. It might give them an update or not. We'll see. And that way, they'll at least if somebody pops in there to look, they'll know where to find it.
Okay.
And Ramesh as well yesterday said he may get 2 more people as well join us.
Let's see. Where can I do that? Okay. Oh, come on. Now get back to the okay, I'll drop it in the broadcast link, as it's called, on the event. Hopefully people will find it. And all right, we're very close. Are you guys ready to get started?
Yeah.
V, you ready?
I am ready to rock and roll.
Let's see if I can get my technology to play right here. Okay.
I
Do we
repositioned
want
my
to?
what's up?
No, I was about to say, do we want to wait a few more minutes in case Ramesh or
Yeah, let's start it like a couple minutes after, just give people
yeah,
time to get here.
just in case, yeah.
And then I can make my very important comment I was going to make right now. So if you guys haven't noticed, I shifted my computer around because my wall is not green behind me anymore, because now I'm getting natural light directly on my face, and natural light is just so much better. Like I'm like, oh my God, I look younger. Like this is nice. I like this.
So that's what I'm missing, is using natural light.
All it is, man. That's
My
all it is.
looks and my age. Oh my. Okay, I'm gonna have to rearrange my office then and have the window shining light in on me then.
I kind of had it sideways, and then I repositioned it so the window's right in front of me now, and I get to look out the window, but I get this good glow.
Now you got to figure out your green screen again.
Yeah, I got to paint that wall. This whole room's gonna end up being green.
Yeah, but how are you gonna paint the door?
Same way I paint the wall. I'll just paint it all green. It's all gonna be green.
Okay, you can buy a green screen on Amazon for like
It's
under
so much
50
easier
bucks.
Just to look, I have this side painted. That's the wall.
Oh,
Where I was sitting facing that way. So now that will get painted.
yeah, well, yeah, I don't recommend a
Green's not
green
bad
room.
color. Green's like a nice color. It's like when it's light, it's like, oh, it's warm. It's good
We
for
try to keep things pretty simple.
So if natural light makes you look younger, I'm going to be moving outside.
There you go. Plus, with some
rain
trees,
or shine, we're outdoors.
yeah, that's right.
No, I've started taking collagen lately. I haven't taken collagen in forever, and I feel like my skin is less wrinkly. I'm starting to deal with that. I'm a little too young to worry about that, but just noticed I should probably worry about it because I'm on screen all the time. So I started taking collagen. I was like, oh, it looks a little better.
Up by collagen.
Kimberly pulls out a tub of it. Just
I was gonna say, I'm gonna have to get the bulk order on that then, if that's the case.
I keep saying that I have to practice my Botox face when I'm on video so much, and I'm waiting for somebody to say, "Oh, your Botox isn't working." So I need to stop saying that.
I'm screwed when I'm older, guys. You guys aged well. All three of you have aged very well. Jeremy, you too, man, even though you're not on screen. My face is so expressionful. Like I had wrinkles in my forehead by the time I was 20. So like this is gonna look like a prune by the time I'm done. Just because like I smile with my whole face, I talk with my whole face, like and those wrinkles are definitely getting their use.
Hey, I've given up on perfect appearance. Want to work on letting my character outshine my looks.
Exactly,
And,
that's what's inside counts.
It's a good
And
way
so
to-
I'm having to work a lot on character because it's got a lot to overcome.
I've earned every wrinkle and crease. I'm okay with that.
All right.
rock and
Well,
roll, Kev.
say again.
Let's rock and roll.
Let's do this thing, huh? Oh, Anton, you need to give us admin.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, good call. Let me do that real quick. Yes. Okay, you're good, Kev.
Me too, Anton, please, so that I can record just, okay, yeah, thanks.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. We are so glad to have you join us with day 2 of the Human SOS Summit. And we appreciate those that have joined, and we anticipate some more people joining us along the way. And we're looking forward to sharing today about onboarding. And V will take charge of that. But for the moment, I've been asked to talk a bit about Human SOS and the leader. And I want to just get everyone to kind of put on your imagination or thinking cap or whichever version that you're accustomed to, and I'm not going to put a lot of text up today. Just want to use some imagery and let you think about it. But Human SOS is basically about living our life and in a total way with congruence, as we talked about yesterday, but not just part of our life, but our whole life, and living it at work as well. And that creates some challenges because not everyone is working and doing what is really that their life is about. So a lot of different questions that come up as a result. But in the end, we want that people to be able to work the way they live, because if we don't, how long we are able to work and how productive we are is going to be very limited. And we're going to be facing the problems that we have already been facing. And I like this graphic that I was able to find, because it talks about a lot of the different aspects of humanity, and such as collaboration and listening and empowerment and tolerate and diversity, working side by side. So just a lot of the components that we are discussing. And sometimes when we talk about humanity at work and we talk about emotional intelligence and things like that, especially people of my generation, they start cringing inside and they start talking, thinking, oh boy, here we go, group hug. We're going to join hands and sing Kumbaya. And no, it's not all about feel good and those pieces. That's a part of it, sure. But I haven't met anyone that doesn't enjoy being able to feel good about what they do and who they are. So, but it's not the type of picture that gets conjured up when we talk about human sustainable operating system. And so, like to talk a little bit about one of our mantras as we have come together in our vision and trying to develop and move forward with Human SOS. And the mantra is manage things, lead people. And just currently, unfortunately, we have a lot of people in the work world that are in roles and they focus primarily on managing things. And you'll see on this graphic, that means doing metrics, that means considering performance and to-do lists and tasking and projects. That's all necessary. And it involves people, but there is an element of this that doesn't apply. And when we only focus in on the left side of this principle, we end up with micromanagers. We end up with what is archetypal boss, the bad boss, and so on. So what we have to do is to bring in another favorite term that we use at Prospective Force, and that is balance. And the balance to the managing things is leading people. And that means taking an approach to people that first and foremost considers them as human beings. We really have to think about how to, and rather than demand and push and challenge and threaten to get people to do things, is how to motivate people and how to inspire them to do what we need them to do. And hopefully, whatever it is that we're getting them to do lines up with what they do and do well. So leading people. And so we need to just really focus in on how to manage things and lead people. So you have to consider how to do both. And what I have found, I do training for leadership for a lot of field leaders, and I have trained hundreds of people. And what I find is that quite often that these leaders are really not strong at managing the things or leading the people, and especially not leading people because they're still struggling to manage things. And one of the what I advise them to do is figure out a way to manage things that works for them. We and those of you that know me know that I am not a fan of formulas. In fact, some might say I'm a little bit antagonistic towards them because formulas don't fit people and people don't fit formulas. But what we do have to figure out is how to manage things in a way that we will keep it up, that fits us. For example, and I know Anton can identify with this, people that diet. We watch people diet. It lasts for however long the official diet period is, and then people quit the diet, and they usually end up in a worse place because the diet was such a change and a shock to what they do and who they are. And so it doesn't work. It doesn't sustain. So with managing things, figure out ways to manage things that work for you. One of the big questions that I always ask among leaders is, what is your way of processing information? And there's a variety of ways, but there are two particular camps that come up. You have some people that will manage things using digital capability, and they really would rather be digital than paper and have trouble filing paper and keeping up with it. Yet you look at their digital world and it's lined up and in order how they can manage it. Others are so uncomfortable in the digital world that they're going to rely primarily on paper and pencil, and that's fine. If you know that about yourself, work accordingly. And if there's something in between, whatever, but figure that out. How can you manage what you need to manage? Because if you don't keep up with those things, your projects are not going to be as successful because you're poor planning and organized. So really work on a system that helps you as a leader, as a manager, whatever the title you prefer, to be able to manage the things you're responsible for. And if you do that well, then it gives you more time to be able to lead people. And one of the reasons that we tend to want to manage people rather than lead them is because it's efficient. And we, as I talked about yesterday, we like to fit them in our nice, neat boxes because we can fit our boxes together in a way that we can keep track of it and so on. But people don't fit boxes well. So what we need to do then is to take the time to lead the people, and that involves several principles. One of them that we talk about all the time, and that is to find out about your people, know your people. If you don't know them, you can't lead them. You cannot set up situations to move them forward. And the second component that we deal with, and we model this in our own worlds, and that is having a vision. If you don't have a vision, you are going to find it difficult to lead people. And that vision, not only do you have to have it, but you have to be able to communicate it well and even communicate it in a compelling fashion so that the people that are part of what you're doing are going to buy in. They're going to find passion to follow that vision, to be a part and moving towards that vision. And then the other two components that follow on that is mission and, of course, planning, so that on the left side you can manage things and be free to lead people. And what I find is when people, managers, bosses attempt to manage people, especially current generations, is that they end up spending all their time trying to deal with either motivation engagement or conflict among their team. So that in the end, real common is that the management of things gets put off till the last minute. I know a lot of leaders that have to do a report or gather data, and they're at 11 o'clock at night in their own time trying to pull this together and anxious and sweating bullets, and their stress level is not where it needs to be, especially at 11 o'clock at night. And it's because they've spent so much time dealing with people issues the wrong way. So manage things and lead people is a core component of leaders in the human SOS model, the human SOS principle. And one of the things that I like to really encourage people is to understand that the leadership, the lifestyle leadership that is the key to this is servant leadership. And it's the willingness to be either, in this graphic, you see some people being held up by others, and at some point, that's where the leader will reside. Other points, the leader needs to be willing to be one of the people holding others up and staying in the background. And then in the last, I don't know, maybe year and a half, it really, a principle or an application principle, servant leadership, really hit me right between the eyes. And let me tell you a little bit about that. I used to, and I still share a little bit, people have romantic notions about being their own boss and how amazing that is, and get to do whatever you want and just all this. Well, having run now on my second business, and I have come to face the realities of the business world and being my own boss. And there is definitely some great things about that position, but there are some things that make it not so romantic. And so what I would tell people to give them a balanced perspective on being your own boss, being an entrepreneur, is that I used to tell people that the worst boss that I've ever had was me. And it's true, because I'm hardest on me more so than I am on anyone else. But it started dawning on me that I am missing a part of the very principles that I teach leaders, and that is servant leadership. I would, if I was advising a leader and found out that they were being the worst boss, I would certainly address that and be very concerned and so on. But why not the same for me? And what I began to understand is that I have to develop using servant leadership principles and direct them towards me. So I have really changed the way I approach things, and it forced me to even dig down a little further into what servant leadership is about. And I realized that there are three core characteristics of a servant leader. And those three core characteristics are responsibility, acceptance, and humility. And in order to live as a servant leader and be a servant leader, you've got to have those core characteristics. So I started digging into it a little further. And what does that mean if I'm applying that concept to me? If I'm being a servant leader of me, because I've got to start by being a leader of one. If I can't lead myself, I am not going to effectively lead others. So started looking at responsibility. I had to realize that, yes, there were things that occurred in my world, my life, that I couldn't control that affected me negatively. But at some point I had to say, that happened. I have to acknowledge it, but then I have to say, what am I going to do about it? And take that on. And that includes all of it, the good and the bad and the ugly, to use an old movie reference. So responsibility and owning what's around me. being responsible for it. Second component of these characteristics, or second characteristic, is that of acceptance. And that's a tough one because most of us have not accepted who we are. Part of the reason that we struggle so with confidence is that we don't have confidence in who we are. We haven't said that I've been created and designed well, and that's okay. I'm not perfect. In no way am I perfect. Likely won't be perfect, but I am who I am. And a key mindset for me was to realize that I wasn't a cosmic accident. And so just applying acceptance to me. And by the way, if you, as you learn to accept you, you begin to be able to accept others. If you don't accept you, you're going to struggle trying to accept others. So the third component or characteristic of servant leadership is the component of humility. And one of the things that I have realized is part of humility is in accepting who we are, owning up to our own mistakes. And that involves, first of all, getting forgiveness for how I've blown it. And I know I've blown it over the years, and I continue to blow it because I'm not perfect. So being humble and seeking forgiveness. And for me, and this is my approach, it's not something that's mandated of others, although I suggest that it's a good idea, is seeking forgiveness for me as a person to my creator and accepting that and applying that to my life with humility. Well, part of this characteristic of humility is also giving forgiveness to other people. I was reading a post on LinkedIn this morning talking about bitterness. And one of the worst things and will keep you from being a servant leader is the whole issue of bitterness. And the best way to not be bitter is to be forgiven and to forgive. And so as we approach with the characteristic of humility, giving and receiving forgiveness is such a key part. And when that includes, again, as I said, I was one of my own worst critics as a boss. I've got to forgive me. It's one thing to accept forgiveness from others. It's another thing for us to apply that forgiveness, to make that a part of us. And so those are the three core characteristics of a servant leader. And first, I apply it to me so that I can then gain confidence to lead me into being excellent at what I do. And then as I can apply this leadership principle, servant leadership principle to me, then I can start also applying it to others because I have experienced it for one thing. And once we experience it, it helps us to be able to share with others. I mean, think about it. The best way to model something is to live it. And if we haven't lived it, it makes it hard to model it. So human SOS and the leader, one of the cores starts with servant leadership. And then applying those servant leadership to the people that we are charged with leading. So we come from the idea of what is human SOS, and it is a humanly sustainable operating system. And as a leader, what does it look like? And for a leader, it means that we have to manage things and lead people. And the first step in that process is to develop a lifestyle of servant leadership. And then once we start applying the principles of servant leadership to our own lives, to ourselves, then we are in a place to begin to apply it to others. And so what does that look like? And this is a real key to how we get to being effective in being a leader in a human SOS environment. So let's talk a little bit about that. And move forward with how do we provide servant leadership for the people around us. First of all, we have to have the foundation of humility. And if you're going to be a servant leader or a leader, because I don't think you can be one or the other, I think you have to be a servant leader to truly lead. You've got to start with realizing that your people that you're working with are in some ways no different than you. And you have to be able to communicate to them the value that they have, because remember, as you've gone through this, you figured out your value, you've accepted your value. Now it's time to accept their value. And it's also time to accept them as different. And so knowing your people and beginning to build relationship with the people that you're responsible for leading is a key. Most of what we see today, and I know Anton especially has great stats on the idea of engagement and how poorly we are engaged in the workforce currently and how big a struggle it is. And the reason I think is that we're not engaging people is we're spending too much time trying to manage them rather than lead them. And for me, it was an interesting testing ground as I was growing and developing in the principles of leadership. For me, one of those testing grounds was as a school teacher, and trying to understand and apply the principles of leadership with 9th through 12th grade high school students is a bit challenging, because anyone that's ever been exposed to that world knows that the idea of leadership for that group is more like herding cats, which is very much what we're dealing with in the workforce now. So the idea was that having principles coming in and holding to those principles. But one of the things that was very eye-opening for me in looking at applying principles of leadership was I had to survey my students. It was part of an accreditation process. I wish I could say I was smart enough to have thought of this on my own, but I was pushed into it because I was trying to develop the best program I could. And one of the requirements is survey your students, get feedback from them. And as a high school teacher, we weren't required, but I decided to do that as going the extra mile. So long story short, one of the questions on this survey was, do you think your teacher cares about you? Now, let me give you a little backdrop. When I approached teaching, I decided that I was going to treat these young people like my own children. And I love my children very dearly. And so that was the way I was approaching them. Well, I got the results back from this survey. And usually you get some interesting results when you do these things. But if something stands out, you go, wow. And 80% of the young people that responded to this survey said, he doesn't care about me. And I thought, whoa. And that was a real eye opener. And by the way, let me give you a little more background on it. At that point, I was being told by the students, Mr. Ward, watch your back. So I wasn't doing much in the way of leading at that point. In some ways, I was kind of hunkered down, hoping, thank you, V, to survive this whole adventure. And so I thought, wow, they think I don't care about them. I'm pouring my heart and my soul into them and love them like my children, but they don't think I care. So I had to figure out a way to help them see that care and concern. So ultimately, without giving up the standards and excellence they needed to learn, I realized that part of the reason they didn't understand my expression of caring was they hadn't seen my vision. So one of the pieces that helped to make a big difference here was I posted my vision on the wall for my young people. Once they started understanding what I was doing, the care I had, and I had to demonstrate it different ways, but it went from Mr. Ward, watch your back to Mr. Ward, we've got your back. And it was about applying the principles of leadership and giving them a vision of what it was that I had for them. So being a servant leader is so many faceted and such a necessary part of the human SOS system. It's very critical. But if you apply these principles, the power of this is an old concept. At one point we called it peer pressure. Now we call it role modeling. And even more current is being the change that we want. However you want to put it, is to live the example that others can follow. And it doesn't mean that we're trying to get them to become us. What we're trying to do is model the principles of being human and being a servant and a leader so that they can apply those for themselves in where they live. So human SOS, as a leader, the key is managing things and leading people and learning how to be an effective manager and an effective leader to those that we are in charge of. And that's why we are so passionate about working together as a team to help bring concepts and principles to anyone, individually or organizations, because we've all seen the power of this human SOS. And so we really invite you to come along, be a part of this movement, whether you engage us or not. Help make this movement bring change. Help us to avoid the what is the term where we use up our resources and the mistakes we've made in with our environment. Let's help avoid that. Let's not take 20 or 30 years to make those adjustments and overcome that in the area of our human workforce and how to move that forward and make it truly sustainable. And by the way, business owners, anyone that sees this is not just a giveaway. I can assure you that as these principles are put in place, you will see that your people produce so much more and they become an evangelist for what they do for your company. And as we talked about yesterday, they also become your built-in recruiter. Done right, who knows? It may be that your recruiting budget is reduced remarkably because your people are engaged and a part and fulfilled in your human SOS in such a way that they're looking for their friends to come join and be a part as well. So it's certainly valuable. It's not just about warm fuzzies and group hugs. It's very practical, a lot of good application, and it's very effective in overcoming the challenges that we are currently facing. So really encourage you to look at human SOS, learn from this summit, and then talk to us, because we're just giving you, in the limited time we have, we're giving you good information and even application, but there's a lot more to it, and we'd love to work with any organization to help bring human SOS to your company. So that's all I've got.
Kev, I just want to throw this out, for leaders, future leaders, and anybody that'll watch this in the future. It is leaders' responsibility to create this movement. It is leaders' responsibility. I've mentioned the words to be the people's champion. We know that leadership is not a right. It's a responsibility. It's a privilege, right? And we need to treat things that way. And an analogy that I want to share as I was listening to you, it's for the first time it came to me. I don't know if you guys are familiar with I'm sure you are, with Disney movie, The Beauty and the Beast, right? You guys know how the Beast has that flower that he protects, right? And when that flower loses all of its petals, the Beast forever will stay as the Beast. But I look at that flower as an employee, right? It's a team member. leaders need to do everything they can to protect that flower, to put it in the right environment, the right temperature, you know, to put the shield over it to prevent it from being impacted by things from outside environments. But the other thing is leaders shouldn't be taking that flower out and waving it around aimlessly, expanding energy of that flower, expanding use of that flower that's misused. You know, that's the big thing that I see a lot of leaders do, is create a lot of inefficiencies for their people that are utilizing the resources from the human beings in ways that shouldn't be utilized. And people already are so taxed with everyday life, with everything that's going on, that it's become even more important than ever before for leaders to manage efficiencies of how those human resources are being used. You cannot just go, okay, we're going to run 100 miles per hour this direction, and then because it doesn't work, just change direction and be fine. Human beings are making that journey. Human beings have to make those adjustments, and we need to protect them like that beast protects that flower.
Yes. Give all the credit, take all the blame as a leader.
Yep. And if
All
you
right.
don't like that, it's not for you. That's just the cold reality. You know, I've been harsh with some leaders, and I was like, if you don't like that, and if you don't like that your job only exists because of these people, and you don't get that, you shouldn't be a leader, bottom line. And then the leadership's not for everybody, and I believe that.
That is true. In fact, just again, I won't get too far into this and get started on it, but the reality is leadership is not for most. That doesn't mean that the rest are not as good. It just means that we need excellent people to do what needs to be done on a daily basis. And that is honorable, that is desirable. And a part of what a leader does is celebrate those people in all of those roles at every level. And so, yeah, definitely. All right. So what we will do is we will take a break, and let's see here. I'm going to try to get my little handy dandy timer up here so that we can have that going on. Bear with me just a second, and that way Ms. V can prepare for her segment. So we have our little timer up here. So as you
5
join
minutes.
us,
Yeah.
and why is it, you know, technology is great when it works, right? Let's see. Okay, it's not going to cooperate. Maybe, I don't know. Give me just a second. No, it's not. So we're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. We will time 5 minutes, and when the time is up, we will have be ready to go. And
No, it's
It'll be the panel
the
first.
panel first, Kevin.
say again.
Panel then V.
Oh, the panel. Golly. See, I get so focused, guys. I apologize. I get focused when I am doing what I do, and so I didn't refer to my notes for the next part. So yes,
It's just because you're so excited to listen to me, Kevin. I know.
That's it. I can't wait to hear what V has to say, because she's always got something good to say that I take away something every time. So we'll be back, and we'll get into our panel discussion on assimilation and alignment.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I did finally get the timer working.
I'm not ready for the cold. I don't want it. I'm in the wrong state for it too.
Well, Georgia, we cool down. We're warming back up, but we're not miserable all the time at this point. So
It's coming. All right, let's do this. So guys, welcome to the next portion of our summit. Just like yesterday, we are going to follow up with the panel next, and the three of us will discuss onboarding and specifically, looking at alignment and assimilation, which is what the outcome of onboarding should be. And after that, V will dive into the presentation of, the onboarding presentations, and then we'll close it out just like we did yesterday. And then we'll do that by, what is that, 2:00 Eastern and, noon Mountain and 8 p.m. Eastern European, and I can't do Indian time. All right, guys. So the question to you guys right away, right out the gate, let's create some clarity into even the title of this panel. What is alignment when you're trying to create alignment with onboarding, and what is assimilation when you're trying to create onboarding assimilation? What are those two different concepts, and why are they important?
So if I can start, I would say alignment for me is when a leader ensures that his team members, whether they are existing or especially new team members, are aligned with the vision of the company or the team or the organization. So ensuring that they all have the same goals, the same vision, the same values, so that again, after, people can work as a team together and make sure that they use each other's strengths and really make the best team possible. And assimilation for me is again ensuring that whatever knowledge is being given to especially new team members, new hires, is that they have time to absorb the knowledge. It's one thing to provide lots and lots of knowledge, but if people do not have the time to absorb it, to practice it, to realize what does it mean actually, you said this, or one of our value is that, but what does that really mean? So for me, alignment and assimilations are key, and where you start to bring that to your organization is as soon as you have your people on board. I would say already as a start, and that's one thing we discussed yesterday with the hiring, you already need to identify if your people are the right fit for your organization, if your values are aligned with those of that candidate. But once you have verified that, and once they are starting with you, starting day one, this is when the leader's job is to ensure that people are aligned throughout these teams and throughout these organizations. What do you think, Kevin?
I think alignment, again, I'm kind of simple, but alignment starts with vision. Do we have alignment around our vision? And then if we've got the alignment with the vision, then the assimilation is how, as an individual, what is my part? How do I fit in being a part of that vision? So keeping it just very high level, I agree with what you said, V, that it's all a part of becoming a part of the organization, the team, and making sure that we are a fit. So very much so.
No, I love it, guys. To me, it's one is right. Alignment is that I did the job of sending the information out there that everybody has at their disposal. They know how to do the job, and it's been there. But assimilation is that information connected, it was received, understood, and is able to be applied in a way that it was intended. And there's so many things that go into that, and that's what we're going to ultimately cover in onboarding today, because oftentimes I see leaders, when we say the word check the box a lot, check the box that the information was sent out. I did the training. I covered the topics. My T's are crossed. My I's are dotted, and it's all good to go. No, it's not, because there's the component of receiving information, right? And we talk a lot about learning design and how to teach people. And I talk a lot about taxonomies of learning and stuff like that, and how it's not enough just to understand something. That's the very beginning of learning. That's just being able to regurgitate information. You told me something and I basically remembered what it meant. But then being able to take that same information, apply it in a different situation that may not be the same, takes a whole other skill set. But then to take new information and that's irrelevant, apply it in a non-relevant way and completely synthesize a new plan is ultimately what we want from alignment. We want people to be so aligned to what we do that if I'm not there as a leader, my downline can make decisions without me, freely is empowered to do so, but also has enough depth of knowledge to execute things that way, right? So that's kind of the difference for me. So the next question that I have for you guys, how do you effectively, actually, you know what, before that question, let me ask you, what is the best time frame to onboard new hires? Let's start with kind of some concrete numbers. What do you guys think? Should it be like a week, month, 3 months? What is a good amount of time to onboard new hires?
Wow. I would say as immediately as possible. And part of the rationale there goes into learning principles. And funny that you mentioned that, Anton, is like you read out of some of my notes on learning, how learning occurs, something I shared. And but yeah, part of effective learning processes is immediacy. And so the sooner that we can capitalize and get people plugged in and moving and doing what we want them to do, what we've hired them to do. And by the way, usually the reason they're looking for this job is they want to start earning as quickly as possible. So just very pragmatic.
I'm saying more like not when it starts, but more how long does it go? Like how long are you on board for?
Go ahead, V.
So for me, I would say overall, I would see onboarding in two phases. The one is really more the training, ensuring that the people get the basic knowledge about the jobs, the organization, the tools they need to use, etc. And then, as you said, Kevin, the practice, that they need to practice what they've been taught, whether it's, again, using a certain tool, knowing exactly who is who, etc. So to answer your question, Anton, I think this period between the training time and, let's call it, the practice time, the overall onboarding, to me should last at least 3 months, because it's, as far as I know from my experience, it's only after approximately 90 days that a person starts to understand, okay, what is his or her role, what he or she needs to do, what are the responsibilities that he or she needs to take care of, and really start to understand who is who in the organization. So I think the 3 months period is a minimum, so that, again, the person has the good basis to move forward and, again, to grow and thrive in his job, his or her job.
Yeah, I would agree with that 90 days is likely minimum, but I'll also add my non-formula answer. It needs to last as long as each individual needs it, and not until there is a clear handoff to the team leader or whoever they're working with, that they're confident that they can then move into that team and that situation in such a way that it doesn't leave them hanging or insecure.
And this is where I get to argue with Kevin for a change. Usually I agree with everything he says. And I will push back and I say, not as long as they need it, because at some point we have to understand that a manager has limited resources and they can only be taken in so many levels. If an employee hasn't picked something up and you've invested enough amount of time on onboarding, there is such thing as bad hires. I don't want to say that there's never a bad hire, and that sometimes you may realize as the onboarding is going on, that it's just not picking it up. Don't play this out. Sit down, have a conversation, either move them into a different role or potentially move them out of the organization and help them find another job somewhere, because it's not a good fit for them first and foremost, right? But to me, I like your guys' answers, and I like the caveat you threw out there. As a consultant, I'm going to say 90 days because that's a typical thing that we're used to, you know, in corporations and stuff like that. But as a coach, I'm going to say it depends on how much do they get to do all the tasks that are necessary for them to do within that time, right? Is it a job that's maybe seasonal, right? And you need to think about that as a leader. What if they don't get hired him in the summer, but the thing they do sometimes in the winter doesn't actually start until the winter? There's certain things that we do in organizations like that. So you may need to think about, I'm going to have to almost like re-onboard them again. Maybe I'll let go of the reins for a while. And when they know the next thing is coming back in, I do phase 2, right? So it just depends on how many times have they had the chance to execute their tasks on their own and practice the things that they've been taught.
So that's a great point you're making, and I'd like to take an example. So when I was working in Amazon, we were hiring lots of people to help the customers, especially through have busy periods such as Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Christmas. And as you rightly said, Anton, we could not afford to have some people for 3 months just practicing before we were getting to these busiest periods. So as the leader, and to Kevin's point earlier, the leader needs to have the vision of what he or she wants to achieve, and then for what. And then by having these people, these new hires deal with certain things, then the leader knows, okay, for the complicated cases, I will not have these new hires work on these complicated issues. I will only have them pick up contacts for the easy questions or the most frequently asked questions. So it's a connection between what the leader has in mind, what the situation is, and what people need to do. So great point, yes.
And awareness, it requires a high level of awareness from a leader and a level of care that goes, you know what? I don't want my people walking around like they don't know what they're doing. Not just because it's ineffective for the job. Yes, that's obvious. But because they feel ineffective, because they're walking around feeling unconfident, feeling like they can't take initiative. And that's a horrible way to be as a human being. Nobody wants to walk around feeling like they don't know what they're doing.
I think the key message here, or a key message, not necessarily the key message, is that we don't let people get lost. Okay, so often in current processes, you reach a time, you reach a certain number of training hours, you reach something, and they're assumed to be there. And then if you're also in an organization where your HR department is doing your onboarding and then they're handed off to the team, making sure that the person doesn't get lost in the handoff. And it's so communication about this and about that individual becomes so critical to keep the process moving forward and not losing people along the way, and forgetting that, yes, that they are human and they may not have gotten what they need to get at this point and may need to pick it up and go again, or as you mentioned, Anton, maybe to realize this is not working and either shift a different direction or to help them find alternative options.
Bringing people along when they shouldn't be there is an unsustainable practice. And I want to make sure that people understand sustainability doesn't always mean just being nice. Sustainability means being effective, right? And that oftentimes I think when we mention the word human first, human sustainability, think that you're just a pushover, you're super soft. No, that's not the case. You just assess things from a standpoint that people come first. But sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and that includes putting people first and making tough decisions for them. But I like how you mentioned transitions, right? And that leads me to my next question. So,
sorry, Anton, just before, sorry to interrupt, Shatat made a comment. He said, I think the time frame should be changeable because different types of needs require different time. That's a great point, Shatat.
not
Thank
being
you.
rigid. It's such a great point, Shatat, is that we can't be rigid. We can't, this idea of having an onboarding playbook, you know, from the 70s or, you know, whenever you had this binder that everybody went through this binder the same way, same everything. It's no longer effective. You might as well not do it. If you're going to do it that way, you might as well just spend some one-on-one time with these people and it'd probably be better off because it has to be so custom tailored. But Kev, you brought up a good point of transitioning, right? So you did a great job covering, we recruited this person. They said, yes, on the job, on the job interview, they sign their offer letter. How do we go from that signature being on a piece of paper to now we're going to bring them in and onboard them? How do we make that transition from recruiting into onboarding to make it as seamless and humanly sustainable as possible? And that's for both of you guys.
Team within a team. Okay, and I know that's a strange sounding answer, but what people need to realize, okay, if I'm the leader of the team getting this person, and then I need to be working with the leader of the HR team or onboarding team, and we need to work together as a team to make sure that these kinds of things happen. And so as we approach teams within teams, then we are able to better communicate. That's the value of those teams within a team, so that we're in regular communication. Okay, did Susie get, she's completed her onboarding process official? Is she ready to transition and all that? And we're communicating, and the team leader might say, no, that she needs a little more of this or that, or the onboarding leader may say, no, she needs a little more time, or it may work the other way. Hey, Susie is just really getting this and she's passionate. We don't need to hold her back by making her wait this period of time. We need to get her in there and let her really jump on and move forward.
Yeah, I agree with the team, and Jeremy says that's where an onboarding team comes into play, exactly. And to me, one of my favorite topic is communication, constant communication between the newly hired person and the organization. And exactly that's where the team comes to play. You need to, the new hire needs to have constant communication with HR to make sure that the contract is signed, that all the necessary papers are filled in, whether it's for social security and employment, etc. With the hiring manager, maybe the hiring manager needs to know if the person has certain needs or certain requirements. Maybe, again, I don't know if you guys have that in the US, but in Europe, there is more and more focus on whether people need a special chair or they need a screen with that is higher, etc. So the hiring manager can take care of that before the employee, the new hire, comes on board. If you're an expatriate and you are supposed to move countries, then again, you may be, if your company is offering that, you may be put in contact with a relocation agency who will help you start looking for maybe houses or apartments where you can go and live, or maybe gave you some tips on the schools where your children can go to if you're moving with your family, etc. So it is really a team, and that's why I say communication is very important, not only from the company side, who needs to ask the new hire or guide the new hire in all the formalities that needs to be done, but also the new hire also can say, well, for instance, again, with the relocation agency, I can only start looking at apartments from that date, because before that I need to travel or I need to do certain things, etc. So it's really communicating, setting the right expectations from both sides, so that then again on day one, the new hire can really start being fully focused on his new jobs and his new responsibilities.
No, great points, guys.
I would offer that one thing to be careful here is making sure that as this process goes through, if there are multiple people involved, that we are have one person that is the leader for this person, so that we learn in emergency medical response that if you're going to help somebody in an emergency situation, if you just yell out, call 911, everybody goes, oh, well, they got it. No, they got it. Yeah, they got it. So the key is you point at somebody, make eye contact, and say, you call 911. Same concept here. If there are multiple people, get one person that is the leader in this effort.
I would challenge that the person's leader needs to be that person, and whenever feasible, I know that sometimes it may not be feasible, but I would say I'd be hard pressed to see many other priorities that a leader has to take care of than onboarding their new hires. V will cover this in great detail, this presentation on how important onboarding is and why that is the case. But I think it definitely should be the leader. But what I'm hearing a lot from you guys, and what makes me think of, is onboarding starts well before the person steps foot into your building, right? That there's usually a gap between an offer letter and that opportunity when they finally come in, whether they're moving countries, whether they're transferring jobs and they got to give their 2 weeks notice. All those things are relevant. But if you're waiting until they walk into the building to start onboarding them, you've missed some of the most important moments of low effort, high return. That those 2 weeks or whatever, that initial beginning before they step foot into your building, whether you, like V said, and you help them out with looking for an apartment building, or you did something different for them, you just engage them, right? You engage them because here's kind of, you guys know me, I'm an analogy person. So think about it this way. Depends on how big of a piece you're plugging into the system. And what I mean by that is this new hire a frontliner where they maybe don't have a lot of responsibilities, they can kind of come in and pick it up right away. Okay, that's not a big piece. But are you putting in maybe a manager or somebody that's highly technical, that is very specialized? So I want you to imagine like a locomotive. Locomotives are powerful, they're big, but they take a lot to get started. It takes a lot of power to start turning those tires, those wheels, and get it moving. Do you want those wheels to start turning when they start, or do you want those wheels to start turning while they're still getting ready to start? I don't know about you, but if I got to get a big locomotive going fast, I want it to start as early as possible. So I'm reaching out to them, I'm engaging them, I'm asking them questions, whatever it may be, and I'm just getting their brain to think about where they're at. But I'm also showing them that I care. They're already part of my team. I'm leaning on them. I'm trusting them. All those kind of things. And those initial 2 weeks can create that initial drive that as soon as they're there, they're moving instead of just trying to turn that engine.
Well,
And
and I would even go so far as to suggest that even if you got somebody that you picked and they're excited, communicate with them some opportunities to get ready to start even on their own, because then it gives them a chance to actually jump in and own part of what's going on and engage them early on. And so,
yeah, I was about to say the same thing, Kevin. It's a great way as well if when people have an urgent deadline, and for instance, again, taking my example with Amazon, you want to have people as ready as quickly as possible. This is a chance to tell them, hey, have a look at our website, look at our values, look at the products that we're selling, look at the different sellers, etc., so that they start to be acquainted with what they're going to do. And that's a way to shorten onboarding or to make it as efficient as possible when you, as you said, Kevin, exactly, to involve them before. And that is how as well their motivation will be increased, because they will say, oh my God, I haven't even started yet and they're already involving me. So that's a great way. Yes, absolutely.
And I think this answer to this next question is going to be individual, but I'm curious what you guys think. It actually wasn't a question that we had on the panel pre-discussed, but I just want to ask you this because it's making me think about it. What do you think is the toughest part for the new hire coming into the new job? If we all haven't been there in a long time, probably because we've all been managers or whatever, but think about a frontliner coming into a new job. What is the hardest part of it all for them, in your opinion?
So for me, and I will take my example, and I'm thinking of all the introvert people out there. I think the scariest thing is when you're new and you're coming into a building and everybody's looking at you thinking, oh, that's the new person. And you're just there like, oh my God, I don't know them. And who are they? Are they my peers? Are they managers? And you are scared because again, this is a complete new environment you are to discover. You have to not only do a job, but you have to get to know the organization, your team, your colleagues, etc. So to me, this is the scariest part for people, and especially the introverts, is really that first day where they will walk in, they don't know anybody, and everybody's going to look at them and thinking, okay, who are they and what are they going to do?
yeah, this is the place where understanding group dynamic is so critical for the leader, because if as I train people on group dynamic, one of the first things people are doing is sizing each other up, trying to figure out how they fit, okay, who they fit with, will they fit, and so on. And so as a leader, the more that we can really focus in on supporting that the new person during that time, to begin to help them know that they have a place, and including helping them to get to know the rest of the people as quickly as possible, because otherwise they're left to their own imagination as to what these people think, how they're going to react. Whereas if you take the time, and it's a good investment with a new person coming on board, help them to get to know the rest of the team quickly, so that they're not focused on, uh-oh, what is this person going to say, or whatever. Get them secure, the word secure, get them as secure as possible in that setting, and you will help them assimilate much more quickly and much more effectively, and have a better chance that they can fit in and become productive quickly.
I didn't want to assume that we're going to end up with the same answer, but I was kind of predicting that. And the reality is that where people spend is that where managers create most of their focus on, is the piece that the employees most worry about? And the answer is no, because what normally happens, yes, those parts are done, but that's the true check in the box thing that I've ever seen. I introduced you to the team. We did a 5-minute hot seat. You talked about the same 5 questions, and now you're assimilated to our culture. You're accepted. You're ready to go. Boom, go learn technical stuff, right? No, but now let's join these 2 points together we just talked about with those pre-onboarding things and what should happen immediately where we're being onboarded. If you've done pre-onboarding well, some of that technical stuff should be out of the way. Get them comfortable with some basics, so that way the first day or 2 can be spent much more on cultural assimilation, getting them used to being with their peers and getting them comfortable and not feeling like an outsider and everybody's looking at them. So there's just a big gap there that exists between if I asked every person, I bet everybody would say that. I'm an extrovert, but I still say I'm uncomfortable in new buildings and new environments and new teams, right? How am I fitting in? How am I presenting myself? What are these people thinking about me, right? But what is the first thing that I do on the very first day? I take a bunch of tests. I do a bunch of assignments, a bunch of tasks, and I spend minimal time. Or my leader just kind of hands me off to somebody else if they introduce me and they're gone. But that was the only person I had a relationship with through the interview process. So if you happen to have an onboarding team and you can't be the leader that's there with them the whole time, make sure that your onboarding team, or at least somebody from there, is part of the interview process, is part of those conversations. So that's really, in my opinion, how that transitions happen smoothly, is that the same person that was doing the interview or somewhat involved in that is able to transition them and be part of their onboarding as well when possible.
Yeah. We have a comment from Shatat, who said, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If not, my apologies. I think knowing company environment and culture is also very important for a new employee. Yes, you're right. And I will touch upon that in my presentation in a few minutes, but you're fully right. It's not only about the job and here is your colleagues, etc., but the company culture environment, etc., is so important. That's true.
It's such a great point, because, we all know Simon Sinek, or I hope we do, he talks about salespeople. He says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Well, people don't come to work for you because of what you do. They come to work for you for why you do it. That's what ultimately motivates them. Your culture is why you do everything that you do. It's your vision, it's your behavior, it's your values. So those are spot on. That's exactly what you should be introducing them on, but that's not what's happening. That is not what's happening.
Correct.
That is all technical focused. I look at onboarding as 3 things. I look at you have administrative onboarding, you have technical and operational onboarding, which kind of one and the same, and you have cultural onboarding. And administrative onboarding is the one that happens the most. The technical and the one is kind of next, and the cultural is like, all right, we had a meeting, we said what our values are, good to go. You want to know what cultural onboarding should look like? You create the experience that person should recreate. I had a team one time, just a quick story, but a manager took over a bad team that were doing really bad, and he wanted to re-onboard them and show them what they needed to do for their jobs. You know what he did? Took them out to Ritz-Carlton. And he basically gave him the experience of where people don't say no. These teams were struggling with customer service, and they created that kind of environment to set the culture without doing anything technically different. This team skyrocketed to the top because they focused on the right things. So that's such a great point. Next question. So how do you, now it's more prevalent than ever because, you know, with everything going on and with the world shifting more virtually, how do you onboard somebody virtually? If you're not going to be face to face with them, what is it that you must do to ensure that an onboarding still happens and it's a quality onboarding?
I think the level and amount of communication has to be remarkably more because you, as we've observed, when you're in a virtual environment, you don't get all of the nuances. So you may have to explain things more and communicate with more detail and fill in the blanks that would have otherwise been picked up in person would be, for me, that would be part of it. V?
Yes, sorry, I was welcoming one
Yeah.
of our new members. I missed the question. Can you repeat again, Anton? Sorry.
Yes,
Go ahead, Anton.
I was just asking, you know, how do you onboard virtually?
Oh yes, virtually, yes. So again, my favorite, one of my favorite communication, again, you need, especially virtually, you need to be clear and set specific appointments with your new hire, making sure, first asking him or her when he is available to talk, because again, the person may still be working, so is not available throughout the day, or maybe the person is living on the other side of the world and you need to take the time zone, the time difference into consideration. So asking the person when he or she would be available, and then make a plan as well to have this first conversation, say, okay, I want to implement an onboarding plan with you to make sure you know the tools, your colleagues, the policies, the procedures, the culture, etc. I need 10 hours of your time. When would you be available? And then start to make a plan with that person, when the person would be available and who he or she going to talk to, because obviously as the leader, you don't have to train that person on everything. Maybe you have your specialist who will explain the person what are the tools to use, and then maybe you'll have someone else who will explain about the culture and the organization, and then another person who will say, well, these are your main stakeholders, etc. So but I think really from that first meeting, setting the right expectation, asking when it's convenient for the person, so that again they are not forced to again have a call in the middle of the day while usually they're still having a meeting with their still current company, to make sure again that both are aligned, as we said, alignment, both are aligned, both are agree with the next steps, both know what to expect when. That is so important, so that again the person doesn't feel overwhelmed or left out, but is motivated to move forward because he or she has a plan in mind and he knows, okay, by then I finish my current job, by then I will start my new job and I already have this and that knowledge, or I know I will meet this and that person then. So that's very important.
I would also add with virtual is document communication, including recording virtual meetings, because that way you can go back and review. Either one involved can review it, and then as often as possible have an email chain so that if it comes up, we can have that communication record for two reasons. One, clarity, because if you go back and said, well, they say, well, you said this, and you go, well, if you look at this email, this is what I said. And then also it helps us to slow down and think. One thing about virtual is we cannot operate virtually at the same speed sometimes that we can in person. And so consider that the movement is real potentially different in terms of speed.
I love it, guys. And the one thing that I haven't heard us mention is the thing that I think the most toughest to do virtually is the thing that we're already bad at in person and at show care. I think that we already do bad face to face, and I think it's even harder for managers to show care that way. So if that's the case, it may need to be, you know, a random email here and there, just checking in on you, seeing how your day is going, right? Because you would do that because you would be walking by their location in the building after lunch and you would quickly check in with them. But when we're sitting behind our computers, we bog down, we're not seeing them. So it's not triggering our brain to easily think about that. So you have to think about all those minute interactions that happen in face-to-face
Mhm.
situations, and how can you try to replicate and mimic those virtually, whether it be an email, whether it be, you know, a gift card at the end of the week, like, hey, you really had a great week, I just wanted you to know that, here, go grab a $10 coffee from Starbucks, because that seems like how much Starbucks coffee costs. But you know, so that's a big component. The other thing is, I would say, make sure that you check in before and after their day, if possible, with time zones permitting and stuff like that. So, you know, set the plan for the day just like you would if they first came in. At the end of the day, see how the day went, and see if they have any feedback, if there's any additional information they need from what was learned that day, if there's any clarity that's needed. Maybe you need to set up a different meeting for them with another person if you're not doing the onboarding yourself. But why? Because people need to feel cared for. And how do kids spell love, and which ultimately it is TIME. Adults doesn't change. TIME, time. If you want to show care, give them time. And if you can't be face to face, give them time virtually.
Yeah, brilliant.
All right, let's see. We got about 10 more minutes left of the panel, so we'll do one more. Let's talk about kind of the difference between social, cultural, technical, and administrative onboarding. When you guys hear those kind of categories, what do you think of some of these differences between social, cultural, technical, and administrative onboarding?
Well, admin onboarding, hopefully, is pretty clear cut. I mean, you got a certain set of documents and information that you have to gather and process. I would say that's pretty cut and dried. The technical depends on the team, the situation, so it's not quite as clear cut, but still should be a little more easily defined, because you're looking at the skill sets and tasks that need to be done. Can they do them or can they not? And then social and cultural, those are, as a friend of mine says, those are kind of messy. And I don't know that we can give it a checklist kind of approach. It's got to be, this is where I think the art part of leadership comes in, is understanding when have we socially and culturally onboarded someone. And again, that could, some people, you take an extrovert like you, Anton, and you bring them in, get them a little bit secure in the environment, and boom, they're off and running and good to go. But you get someone like me that's more of an introvert and socially introverted, it may take a little more time to figure out how to help me get culturally and socially assimilated, and understand what that looks like will be very different. For an extrovert, that means they're having good conversations and laughter and jokes with their teammates very regular. For someone that's an introvert, it may just mean they're comfortable enough to at least say hello every day or something. That's part of the art of leading people in the workforce environment, is to be able to understand and help them assimilate for them.
Great point. On the administrative side, I would also like to add something, and again, it's mostly for people who are moving abroad, is that often companies should also help their new hires with their administrative tasks that they need. So it may be a working permit or a visa, etc. So this can also be started when the candidate has accepted the offer and signed the contract. But also certain things can only be done when the person is actually on site. So these are things that also need to happen aside from the, let's say, the normal administrative stuff. There are some cases where, again, people coming from different countries or even different regions, they need to have certain additional papers that you can only process once they're on board. So that's one thing. And the technical, again, usually people are hired for their technical skills. And by technical skills, we don't mean only technical, but like a specific set of skills that they may have. So for that, it's more like explaining them what are the responsibilities that they will have, or what are the things they need to do on a certain frequency. So that is, I would say, the most straightforward. The social and the cultural onboarding, and you're right, Kevin, it really depends and it needs to be customized. Everybody's different. You need to take that into consideration. The example you gave with the extravert, introvert is a great one. Another great one, again, and from my experience, having worked for more than 20 years in international organizations and dealing with people from all over the world, I know that in certain countries, on certain cultures, people are more hesitant to ask questions or more hesitant to say, I didn't understand, or can you re-explain, etc. So you also need to take that into consideration, that some people may need more time to maybe not assimilate the thing you've taught them, but just to practice it, or to feel like part of the team, and to feel that yes, they can give their opinion, yes, they can ask questions, etc., etc. So these are important criteria to think of. And as you said as well, Kevin, it's difficult to say when this is happening, because again, as I said, it may be different for people. And so that's probably the most tricky part to measure. The technical side, you can see whether someone or not has got the training in certain tools. The administrative, where when the contract is done, when you know it's done, etc., etc. But the social and cultural aspects are probably the ones that are more intangible because of, again, the differences between personalities and cultures, etc., etc.
They're more intangible and they're harder to prep for. They're harder for leaders to execute, right? And they require a lot more from the leader to be proactive with it. With administrative and technical onboarding, that can be pretty reactive. You put a new hire in a building today, and I can get them through administrative and technical onboarding because I know the job, I know all the bells and whistles. But the social and the cultural onboarding requires me to know the person, requires me to care and understand about the person. That's why so many managers and leaders fall short of this, because they don't spend that additional time, which we'll cover in great detail today. But to me,
And Anton, I just want to piggyback something V said that is so critical, is that as a leader, we got to be sure that we learn about other cultures, because the new person coming in may not be ready and comfortable to talk about their culture to the team. And the more that we can help contextualize that culture for the team, the better it is, so that, you know, it's nothing worse than well-intended gesture on the part of a team member to welcome somebody and realize that because of cultural difference, not only didn't they welcome them, but they might have offended them. So real important that a leader be aware of those things and be proactive in helping their team understand when you're in a multicultural environment, to really don't assume everybody else knows it. Make sure they know it.
yet another point why leadership's not for everybody. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy task. There's a lot of moving pieces that you got to control. But like I said, with me, the four to me, the first two are pretty easy, right? The administrative stuff. The thing there that I say, I reiterate this a lot because I've seen it happen a lot. Make sure your people know all the benefits that come with their job, and they're onboarding, knowing that when the deadlines to sign up for them are, what the way to sign up for it is, what those benefits are, help them understand them, 401ks, all those kind of things. Don't assume just because you got a big 401k and you know what you're doing there, that your people will just automatically take the match. They may not even be investing in 401k. They may need additional education just in savings and 401k education just to be able to choose that benefit that they rightfully should, because if company has a match, that's free money. Then the technical stuff, that's pretty simple, right? But don't think about just exactly what they do. Think about all the things that they may interact with. They may be in contact with a customer that's not really their job, but do they know how to answer their phone properly in the way that your company answers that phone? So don't always just limit it to the skills that they may exhibit directly. There may be some indirect things that they need to be aware of as well. With cultural, you guys nailed that one pretty good. The only thing I would add, cultural, it's both our culture and their culture. Do they understand our culture well, which is our vision, our values, the way that we, do things from the high level standpoint, from character standpoint, but also do we understand their culture, but allow their culture to fit in within ours. Imagine different cultures need to pray at different times. Have we created a place for them where they can go and do that and know that that is reserved for them to do when they need it, right? Or are they going to have to go to their car, feel uncomfortable, or, you know, or not even have time for that? Maybe that break is not even built in. So we need to be aware of all that stuff. And social to me is purely is just with their team, social from that standpoint, from their customers sometimes too, because if you are a kind of business that interacts with your customers a lot, they need to fit in socially with your customers the same way they fit it socially with your team. So those are kind of the main four. And there's the thing is there's not a clear cut like difference between all of them. Some may say, well, this kind of falls under technical, this kind of falls under administrative, and there's not going to be a definitive answer. You just need to take a look at all the tasks, all the different things that happen in your building, and kind of classify them in these 4 categories. What are things that are important socially? What are things that are important culturally? What are things that are important, you know, technically and administratively? And then make sure you hit those, like Kevin said, so nobody's left behind. Because if you left them behind any of those steps, it's going to be an inefficiency. And that inefficiency over time is going to grow. It's going to cause that person to use more resources than they should in a day. And that's definition of not being humanly sustainable. Right. So let's see, we got one more here. And that question is to mentor or not to mentor. What do you guys think? Should a leader, you know, become, and it's not necessarily to mentor your people or not to mentor your people. Should you spend a lot of time with your person in the very beginning? Or should you use a team, perhaps, like somebody's mentioned, you know, have an onboarding team? I'm on the side of you are there with them. Like I literally would put a new hire in my pocket if I could, and they would be with me all the time just to make sure that they feel good, they know everything. But there's also other side of people that say, look, you can't give up that much time, and the time that you do give will not be as good. Let the onboarding team take care of it. What do you guys say?
So for me, I would say both. You should be there for your new hire, but you should also appoint someone else. And again, that's a topic I will cover in my presentation in the next few minutes. You can have someone in your team mentor that new hire. Because again, this person, the new hire will know that he or she can ask questions to someone else, or if she has doubts or concerns or whatever, and maybe doesn't dare to bother you every 5 minutes, so he can go to that other person, and that other person as well can guide the person, tell them maybe some stuff that maybe you as a leader didn't think of or didn't have time to cover. So I think it should be both. And to your point, the point you made earlier on, Anton, you as a leader, you need to make sure you still have regular checks with your new hire to make sure, again, he or she is getting acquainted with all the new things, if he or she needs additional support. But I think having someone else as well mentor that new person is very beneficial, because at least the new hire also gets another perspective on things.
Well, and ultimately, speaking from a leader vantage point, regardless of whether someone's been assigned to a mentor or you're mentoring them, you're responsible for it. Make sure it doesn't get dropped. And I'm with Anton. I really prefer that the leader that they're going to be working with becomes their primary mentor, at least early on, because that leader is the one that's going to set the tone. They're going to know the most about it, be able to give them the best view. And so I would say, as much as possible, make that a priority. And if the leader doesn't have time for that, my question is, are their priorities out of whack?
Or it's a bad org structure, right? To where they got too many people under one team, and one leader's having to oversee 20 people and they're spread way too thin.
Or they're not delegating.
Yep.
You know, they're not delegating other things and empowering their team members on other things. So yeah, if a team leader doesn't have time to mentor new team members, I would worry there's a priority problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're down to about a minute or so.
Yeah, we're good. We're good here. We'll take a break until we have a 15-minute break right now?
Yes.
Yes.
15
so
minutes.
We got a 15-minute break until 50 on the hour. So we're actually going to do an 18-minute break.
Okay.
10 till is when we will resume, guys.
And welcome aboard, everyone. We've been trying to make sure we welcomed you in the chat. And but we've noticed you joining. We're so pleased to have you a part, and look forward to, by the way, having you ask questions, make comments in the chat so that we can engage those as we go along with the summit. So.
You guys have heard me sing V's praises on inclusivity, and just look in the chat. Like, look in the chat and see how many people she has welcomed. And Kevin's welcomed one or two, and then me is like, "Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? Hope you're good." Like, I checked the box, right? This is like in life. We're showing you right now what diversity and inclusion looks like in life, specifically the inclusion part. I'm the leader that checked the box, right? I did the bare minimum. I acknowledged that everybody's here. I said, "Hey, nice to have you." Is that good enough? Maybe, not really. Kevin did a few, he's been busy, but V, every single person that has come in, she's acknowledged that they're here, thank them for being here. That's what inclusion looks like, guys. And I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Sorry
Well, for your
I keep putting you on the
defense.
spot.
Yeah, for your defense, you were talking, Anton, so you couldn't see everybody.
Yeah,
joining.
no. It's just how it is. I know this about you. That's why I pointed it out.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, guys, see you in 15 minutes. Yes, 15 minutes for the presentation. Thank you.
All right.
Hello, I'm in. Is there anybody there?
Hey Isaac, we're on break till 10 till. I don't know if anybody said anything to you or not.
Another 10 minutes, you mean?
Yeah, we'll be about 9 minutes or so at 50 whatever time zone you're. I think you're in Eastern time.
Okay, so I put this on hold. And I'll try to join you. If not, what happens if I join in 1 hour?
Same
You'll be
thing.
there?
You should be just able to just pop back in.
Okay, great. So if I'm still here in 10 minutes, it's fine. If not, I'll have to break. I'll have to leave you anyway until let's say 1 hour. I
Yeah,
don't
no
know.
problem. Just jump back in when you're ready.
Okay, with pleasure. Thank you. See you soon.
If you-
אל תדאג, עדיין חם מדי. לא, 26. מתחיל להיות.
טוב, יש פה איזו פגישה שרצה. זה כעת 5 דקות הפסקה. אמרתי להם, או שאני אספיק להצטרף אליכם כעת, אם לא, אז אני אצטרף אליהם אחרי מערב. נשב איתם, אני יודע, איזה חצי שעה, ואחר כך נלך לטייל. בינתיים יש לי מה לעשות.
וואו.
We'll get started here in about 15 seconds, everyone, just to give you a little warning, heads up.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to share my screen. Yes.
All right, welcome back, everyone. And V, it's your time. You don't need an introduction at this point, so
Great.
lead us on.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We're happy to have you with us today. So for those of you who were there with us yesterday we covered the recruiting or hiring part, and today we are covering the onboarding. So what I'm going to review today or cover with you is first do a quick review of what we saw yesterday. Kevin did a great presentation about hiring or recruiting yesterday, so I'm going to give you a brief summary. And then we are going to go through onboarding. We already discussed a few things in the panel discussions, but still, I hope I will be able to bring you some new ideas or insights. So we're going to first see or talk about putting the square peg into a round hole, then investing upfront and the return on investment you can get when you do a proper onboarding, and finally talking about creating team synergy through complementary strength. I will try to keep this session interactive, so I will ask a few questions and I will ask my colleagues Anton and Kevin if there are any questions or comments I do not see. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me, because with my full screen I do not see the chat comments. So for those of you who are joining us again, welcome. We are starting the presentation on onboarding. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Virginie Lemay-Frisde, and as you probably all can hear, I'm French. I am based out of Luxembourg, and I have worked for more than 20 years abroad. I've been an expatriate for more than 25 years, and I've lived in 6 different countries, working in big international organizations, and the last one being Amazon. And that is the reason why I moved to Luxembourg. I was hired in Amazon to be the senior manager for quality for customer service in Europe, and then became the senior manager for learning and development, also for customer service in Europe. And 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I decided to resign from Amazon to travel the world, which I've done with my husband. And for the last 2 years, I decided to start on my own as a leadership coach, trainer, consultant, to help people and prevent them from reinventing the wheel using the knowledge and the experience that I have. Why leadership? And because again, I've always had mainly managerial and leadership roles in all these big organizations. And I've also worked a lot with people from different countries and different cultures. I've managed teams most of my times with people from all over the world. One of my experiences as well was to go to India to set up a team over there, working with my colleagues in the Netherlands. And so for me, leadership is an encompassing a big umbrella that covers lots of things, among other things, communications and diversity and inclusion, as you already heard. And that's why I will cover these topics in this presentation. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me or to ask questions in the chat. And to me, again, diversity inclusion is so important, and this is to me the part of the human sustainability. As a leader, we should all keep an open mind. We should all be as inclusive as possible, because we all have something to offer, and we all have something to learn from, or somebody to learn from. So before I will stop here talking about myself, and I will move on to our presentation, and as I said, do a quick replay of what Kevin covered yesterday about recruiting. So what we said, recruiting, is that humans are basically not checkboxes. Often when companies recruit people, it's more like a tick in the box that they need to do. They want to say, oh, I need to hire a certain number of person, and they're looking for candidates. And once they've found them, yes, done, I've found my candidate. Well, we think as a prospective force that this is not humanly sustainable. And to be humanly sustainable, filling a role is not a checkbox exercise. It should not only be, yes, I found a candidate. It's really putting people first and finding the right match between a role and a person. And by that, that also means that people or companies should not only look at a CV or resume, but look behind what is written on a CV or on a resume. Look at the potential of people. And so that means sometimes it can take a long time before filling a role. And it is sometimes better to wait for the right person to fill in a role than hiring someone just for the sake, again, of hiring someone and checking a box. It is important that you find the right person who has the right skills, the right motivation, and who also has their values aligned with those of your organization and your teams. However, in some cases, some companies take a long time to recruit people. And in that case, you may start thinking, okay, am I doing the right thing? Is there something wrong in my process? Because if it takes too long, that's probably not from the candidate's point of view that something is going wrong. It's more like maybe the processes that I'm using are maybe not the most adequate for what I'm looking for. So again, try to find the right balance, but keep in mind that humans are not checkboxes and that you should look at the candidate beyond the resume that you're getting. And so once you get the resume of your people, you have what we discussed yesterday, what Kevin mentioned, hunting versus gathering talents. And as you all know, the job market is full of candidates, especially nowadays. The job market is global. If you're looking for someone, you can find someone with the right skills and the right experience and the right motivation, the right values on the other side of the world. So be mindful of what you're doing to attract or find your candidates. And that means you need to keep an open mind. Don't always look for or use the traditional channels you were using. Try to think, are there other ways I can attract talent? Are there other ways I can find the people I'm looking for to fill in my roles? And so that means you need to be to balance again, and you will see that balance is the word that we use often. Balance between finding the right person who has the expertise that you're looking for, the know-how, and then again the general mindset that people may not have the technical skills that you're looking for, but again, they may be motivated, they may be very enthusiastic about working for your company. They may show that they have the potential to become somebody great within your organization. So again, keep an open mind. Don't always think of the traditional ways that you have to find your people, to hunt or gather them. Really keep an open mind and do some active recruiting. We also mentioned yesterday there are different ways of doing the recruiting. There are the traditional ways, whether it is putting an ad via LinkedIn or on different job sites or even on your website. But you could also find other ways, like maybe organizing some fairs, some job fairs, participating in some job fairs, or even approaching colleges, universities, or maybe high schools to start to find identifying your people. Again, keep that open mind at all time. This is how you will be able to recruit the right persons and not be under stress when you really need to fill a role urgently. And so, as I said, when you're looking for someone, look beyond the resume. As I said before, the resume is only a picture of a candidate. It's a picture of what the person has done, what is his or her professional experience, the education, etc. But there are so many more things that a person is that you cannot see in a resume. This is also especially valid for the young people out there who do not have any professional experience, who just graduated, who finished their studies. But then again, in that case, and if you see someone with no professional experience, ask yourself or ask the person, okay, what else have you done? Maybe the person is the captain of their cricket team or their football team, and then that means they are used to lead a team. Or maybe you are the person you have in front of you has many brothers and sisters and has already helped the parents to deal with their younger brothers and sisters. So these are things that will not appear in a resume, but that can tell you that a person has the potential to become a great whatever or a great leader. So really keep that in mind. Also be proactive externally. As I just said a few minutes ago, don't always look the traditional channels that you have used. Look for other ways to attract people. Again, job fairs, going on to schools, etc. But also something that is often underused is employee referral. When you have good employees with you within your companies, they are the best evangelists, the word that we used yesterday, the best advocates to represent you, your company, and to tell their friends, hey, I'm working in that company, they're looking for someone, I'm sure you would be great working with us as well. Let them do the talk for you and maybe implement a referral bonus, like if they have found someone, one of their friends or their family members who has applied for the job and who has been offered a position, then give a bonus to that person who referred the friend to. Maybe a part of the bonus will be given now when the person has signed the contract, and maybe another part can be given maybe 2-3 months down the line when the person hasn't left and is sure that he or she wants to continue to work in the company. So again, keep an open mind. Think of other ways of attracting talents, of being proactive externally. But also another thing that we mentioned yesterday is also internally. You need to think long term. And what does that mean is that sometimes companies are going to look outside for candidates to fill in a role, while they may have someone in their teams that is willing or that wants a new challenge or that wants new responsibilities. So it's the leader's role to also not only look externally at other candidates, but also to make sure that they look at their team members. They look at who wants to do what. When the leader works on the career plan of their team members, work on the succession plan, they may know someone may be interested in that role, or maybe they will know that maybe that person has the potential. And another thing that also people underestimate is if you don't have anybody in your team, and again, it's back to what I was saying, the open-minding, the thinking outside of the box, is maybe your colleagues, your peers, they may have team members who are looking for a challenge and they may be willing to work in another team. They maybe have the right skills, they already know the culture, etc. They just need a new challenge. And by bringing someone who has been in another team, that helps you maybe shortening the onboarding, as we discussed in the panel discussion, because the person already knows the culture of the company, because the employee already knows most of the tools that you are using. And so the only thing they will need to know is the getting to know who is who and who are their stakeholders, and also maybe the new policies and procedures and the responsibilities that they have. So really the message here is don't always think traditionally, whether you are looking for people for a job that you need to fill in. Sometimes it's better to wait a bit more instead of really hiring someone quickly to fill in the box, because again, if you're hiring the wrong person, this may cost you in the long term, whether it's in time or in money. But again, think about all the other ways you have at your disposal while looking for some people. Look internally at your team, look internally at other teams. And when you are looking externally, don't only use the traditional ways, but also be creative in your way of recruiting. This is how you're going to attract talent. That's how you're going to motivate people, and you will have people stay in your organization. So I hope I provided a brief summary of what Kevin presented yesterday. Do we have any question at the moment from those of you who were there with us yesterday, or those of you who joined us today? Any questions or comments before I move on?
Great job, Dee. Thanks. You did a better job recapping than I did in the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is fine, Lemmy.
It's still fine? Yes? No,
Yeah.
no questions? Thank you.
So Ramesh has a question, I believe.
Okay.
No, it is clear. Yeah,
It is clear?
Okay.
it's good.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So then I'm going to move on to the next part, which is really, as we said, the core of onboarding. So what we discussed in our panel discussion, and Anton, I wish I could take the recording of the video we've done, because you summarized it so well. I was like, hey, this would fit perfectly in my slide, basic onboarding or robotic onboarding. So if you remember what Anton said earlier on, he says often in companies, you get your candidate, you found him or her, he or she has signed the contract and is coming in your office, and basically you're saying, okay, hi, I'm your boss, and these are your colleagues, and this is your desk, and these are the tools you use, this is your password, and off you go. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but still, often these onboarding, these introductions are very robotic. So what I want to ask you all first is, do you remember your first day on the job that you have now? And if you are not working in a company at the moment, do you remember the first day of your last job? If anyone wants to share how it was. Anybody wants to share, whether it's a good or a bad experience? I just want to hear from some of you. Oh, I see we have a new people joining us. Geoff, welcome. And Usha as well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So anybody wants to share the first day of their current job or previous jobs?
We don't bite. Feel free.
We don't bite, no. So maybe I'm just going to give an example, not of my last job, but maybe one of my first jobs. And that is when I moved to the Netherlands. Was many years ago, was the beginning of internet. And I had been hired to help people get on internet. And it was for French speaking, English speaking, and German speaking customers. And that's the time where we were using a modem, and I didn't know what a modem was. I was not technical, but I was hired to do some technical support for customers. And on my first day, basically, I was told to sit next to a young lady, someone who was my age, and she was Spanish, but she was fluent in French. And I sat next to her, and basically she just told me, hi, my name is Christina, and just listen to the call. Again, at that time we were taking only calls for customers. And I was trying to follow what she was doing on the screen. And as I said, I was not technical. That was Windows 95. So for me, something completely new. And she was telling to the customers who were calling, yeah, click on start, settings, control panel, click here, click there, click okay, okay, okay. And while I was following her, I really was struggling to understand why she was telling the customers click on OK while she herself was clicking on cancel. And it took me many, I know it's silly now, obviously, but at that time, as I say, me not being technical, the reason why I had been hired is because I was speaking fluently French, English, and German. I was wondering, why is she doing that? And why are apparently the customers understanding what she says, but I'm not? And I had all these questions. I had no idea, again, about the job, the company. I was just listening to her for 2-3 days, and after I was put on the phone, and the first customer I got was screaming at me, threatening to call Bill Gates to fire me because I was not giving him the answer that he wants. So that was my onboarding. And looking,
Couple of
Hold
comments.
on, Kev. I know you're going to read it, but I just want to share the worst version. If you guys want to watch the most robotic onboarding, it's Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah.
There's nothing more robotic about that. We thought it wasn't, like, even the drill instructors weren't robotic. We found a playbook that literally told them what to say, how to say it, and how much spit to exert while they're doing it.
How to stand, the whole bit. Yeah. Ramesh commented that apparently his experience with his first day on the job was a long waiting day. And then Kimberly said that her first day at a newspaper job was eye-opener. She was new kid and called kid by all. Had extreme deadlines and mistakes were not tolerated. I was excited and terrified at the same time.
exactly. Yeah, I was also terrified. I was like you, Kimberly, in my example, when that first customer screamed at me and shouted and said I would be fired. And I was like, oh my God, is that really what I want to do? And why am I here? And asking, I was terrified. I cried. And my mentor at that time, the guy came to me and said, no, they are not all like that. All the customers are not all like that. But the good thing, what happened is that he spoke to that customer because the customer didn't want to believe me. And he talked to that guy, and the guy actually told him that I had given him the right answer. And so to my luck, I would say the customer at the end of the day called back, asked to speak to me, and I was terrified, but he apologized. He apologized for screaming at me, for shouting at me and telling me, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you were new, and I also didn't realize that you were the technical support. There are certain things you couldn't do. And so I'm really sorry. And after that day, I was like, okay, tomorrow is another day and it will get better. And it did get better. And I got great opportunities after that. But just why I wanted to share this example, and thank you, Ramesh and Kimberly, for sharing that as well with us, is just to show you how critical it is to have a great first impression on your onboarding. Because for me, this experience was in 1995, so it's 25 years ago, and I still remember it as if it was yesterday. And so these are the things that you remember. And as a company, you want to make sure that your people remember you in a good way and not in a way like, oh my God, what a terrible experience. So again, think about that onboarding. The last thing you want is have a robotic onboarding or basic onboarding. So moving on to my next slide is putting the square peg into the round hole. For those of you who have hired people, who are hiring managers, you may have been in that situation. And if you are not a hiring manager or have never been, you may have seen or heard this before. So you may have had, again, you found a great candidate. The resume was great, experience was great, the interview went very well, the person was very motivated, enthusiastic, etc. And you started the onboarding with them. And then you start wondering, well, they seem great during the interview, but now they seem like maybe not as strong as I thought. So you may have already thought about that. Or you may have thought, or you may have heard managers saying, why aren't my new hires productive yet? They have the skills, they have the knowledge. I've checked their CVs, I've checked their recommendations. I have made the interview myself with them. I talked to them, I asked them to give me some example, and they did. And yet, after X amount of times, a few days or a few weeks, they are still not productive yet. Why is that? I'm hearing some people joining us. Just checking if we have some new people. No. Okay, great. Or unless I missed someone.
No, we're good, Dee, but we do have a comment.
Yes, go on.
Wes commented, said it didn't remember the study, but he said he thought reading something like 85% of the workers' minds are made up about an organization in the first 90 days.
Exactly.
These thoughts can be positive or negative, but the foundation is set within those first 90 days. That's our onboarding period, right?
Exactly, that's what we say. Thank you for that comment. Exactly, and that is why it is critical to get the onboarding right. And the one other thing that you may have seen or heard is wondering, why are your new hires overwhelmed? You think they already know the job. If you hire an analyst, well, the analyst should already know how to work with Excel and SQL and whatever tool you have in your organization. And you're thinking, but why do they seem overwhelmed? Why can't they pick up the job as we explained it to? So then again, to West's point, it is critical that you get the onboarding right. It is not a rush. It is not a marathon that you need to run in a certain time. And then at the end, yes, they finished their onboarding and up, they're ready to go. No, it's not that. It is really, really important that people, companies invest time in this onboarding, because this is what is going to set the tone for the rest of their experiences there in the organization. Obviously, you wanted to give them a first good impression with your recruiting process, and that is what we covered yesterday, from how you recruit people, how you provide the interviews, how after you do the onboarding with the administration things that need to be filled in, but you also need, after, once they are in your organization and starting to be part of your team, you need to make sure that you provide the best experience possible. Because as I said just a few minutes ago, you will have things that people will remember for the rest of their lives, and you want them to have the best experience possible, and not an experience where they're going to say, oh my God, that was terrible. And if they say it was terrible, well, like in my case, as I say, even though my first onboarding, as I explained, next to this young lady was not the best, afterwards, I managed to get great opportunities, and I was able to grow in that organization. I became a mentor myself and team manager, etc., and trained people. So I was fortunate to be at the right time, at the right place. But I know that in some cases, some people, and maybe I could have also done that, said after one day, that's it, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do that. And then again, you have wasted energy and time for nothing, because you have a candidate that is demotivated, that is terrified, that maybe could have been a great potential, and you have let that person go. So again, don't underestimate these first few days or weeks. Make sure that you really take the time to invest in your people. And I'm going to share in a few minutes a few tips and tricks or things that you need to think of when you onboard your people.
And be a comment from
Yes.
Jeremy, and it's a different perspective on the process that is certainly a factor. He says some new hires that I've seen had an issue with the onboarding process due to their being anxious to get to work without learning the business's process. Learning the process when onboarding is critical. So yeah, just the process of the new hire rushing things can be an issue.
Exactly, and that's a great point, and that's what we discussed briefly in the panel, is when you can give some information to your new hires even before they start in your office, or they start officially as your new employee. This is how you're going to ensure a smooth transition. If people had the time to look at your website, or the products that you're selling, or the services that you provide, this helps them getting into the mode of your organization. If you tell them to read certain articles that have been published about your organization, to do their research, which they should have done during the hiring process, then it allows them again to slowly but surely start to feel part of your organization, to understand how things work. And of course, you cannot disclose any confidential information before they are officially hired and they have signed a contract. But before that, there definitely are a few things that you can give to people. Maybe as well, you can encourage them to speak to some of their future colleagues again, and you can inform your team members, hey, I want you to speak to that person because he or she is going to join us in next week, next month, whatever, just so that people again start to have a certain feel about what's going to happen, start to have someone they can start trusting in the organization, that they don't arrive completely blank, but they have maybe someone they already say, oh, okay, I kind of know Anton, so I know that if I come on day one, well, then at least maybe I can ask him a few questions. Or no, now I know that tomorrow I'm going to speak to Kevin, so at least if something is happening or if I have questions, at least I have one or two persons I can refer to. So there are things indeed you can do to help your people get already the feeling that they are part of a new team, of a new organization, and so that they don't feel straight away overwhelmed. Because as you all know, when you start in a new company or in a new team, you are getting tons and tons of information. As we said before, again in the panel, you not only have to get to know new people, but you have to understand the new organization, or if it's a new team, maybe new processes. You need to understand, to get to know your colleagues, your peers, your stakeholders. You need to have new rules that you need to follow, maybe reports you need to provide at certain frequency, etc., etc. So it's overwhelming. And another thing that's overwhelming, and again, I know because I've been there, I've lived in 6 different countries, and every time, even though most of the time I knew the job already, and one time when I moved from the Netherlands to Italy, it was the same company, it was kind of more or less the same job, but it was going to a new country. At that time when I moved to Italy, I was not speaking Italian, so you overwhelm because you need to look for a place where to stay, to sleep. You have new colleagues, you have a language that you don't speak, and you still have to get your job done. And all of that makes you really, really tired because you need to absorb that information as quickly as possible. So the smoother you do your onboarding, the smoother you make sure that that first experience is a great experience, the better your employee will do their job and thrive in the future. Great. Any other questions or comments, Kevin or Anton? No? I can't see the number, but I'm thinking anyway, I'm up to 10 minutes. Yeah. I think I'm ahead of my schedule. So what I would like to do, thank you, Anton. What I would like to do, because I'm going to spend probably more time afterwards, is already give 5-minute breaks for everybody. And when we come back, I would like to have another discussion with you guys. So if that's okay, we're already going to take 5 minutes now. And we are going to come back at, or let's say at past. So it's a bit more than 5 minutes. Is it okay with everybody? Cool. Okay. So let's come back at past. So for our Indian friends, I think it's going to be on the hour. And as I say, we are going to do some kind of brainstorming afterwards. So refresh your mind, get that cup of coffee or go for a little walk for a few minutes, and let's come back at past or at the hour. Thank you.
We'll get started in about a minute, everyone. And so if you would be ready, join us. And again, keep us with any comments, questions you have as things go along, and we will certainly address those.
Thank you, Kevin.
One other housekeeping note for those that are on, just in case you haven't figured out, I know some people are not as familiar with Zoom, but if you look down at the bottom of your screen, there is a little cloud or a little call out or speaker bubble or whatever. If you click on that, you can see the chat area and engage through that chat area. So appreciate everyone's comments, questions, and look forward to more.
Great.
15 seconds, V.
Thank you, Kevin. You see, we don't need a timer. You're just doing just great. No, I love your time on the screen. I need to find a way to have it, to include it as well in my presentation in the future.
Well, you know, I figured out I make a good door holder, and now I guess I do okay as a timer.
Cool. So guys, I hope you have been able to take a small break, because as I say, I'm going to make you work now a little bit, and we're going to do some brainstorming or some discussion. So we've already talked a bit in our panel discussion about onboarding and what makes an onboarding program great. But I would like you now to do some brainstorming with yourself. So I would like to give all of you 5 minutes where I would like you to write down or to think about what makes an onboarding program great, or the opposite. Have you ever had a very terrible onboarding experience? And so why was it terrible? What would you have liked to have? So I would like, as I say, everybody to think about that for approximately 5 minutes. And then we are going to discuss. So whether after you want to write your comments in the chat or ask your question and unmute yourself, that's fine. Whatever works for all of you. But as I said, let's take 5 minutes. So from now, it's 32 on my clock. So I will come back at 37. And as I said, don't hesitate to jump your comments in the chat. So what makes an onboarding program great? And think broadly, whether it's about the length, the topics covered, the people you've met, etc. Or what, on the opposite, what terrible onboarding program did you have, and why was it terrible? What would you have liked to have? So as I say, 5 minutes. Thank you.
You even welcome people while you're presenting. You just can't help it.
Trying, can't help it. No,
Yeah,
you won't change me.
it's so ingrained in you. I love it.
I'm going to reshare my screen. I was looking at the comments in the chat.
I mean, for discussion, we can probably leave the screen sharing off and just see the person.
Yes.
Yeah, you've got a couple of good feedbacks from Ramesh and Kimberly in the chat. I don't know if you were able to grab that.
Okay, hold on, let me go back. Yes, I've seen.
If not, I'll share it out. And
yes.
are you being able to check comments, V?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
checking that. Yes, I'm reading now the comment from Jeff.
Yeah.
Looks amazing.
I have to say, knowing Jeff, and he and I get to catch up especially when he comes to town, that their company is rather progressive in the human SOS component. They are doing some good things, so I'm not surprised at his comment.
Brilliant. Another great comment from VJ there. Thank you guys. Brilliant. Brilliant. So the 5 minutes are up, and please keep on. If you have other things to add, please don't hesitate to add them in the chat. So I've stopped sharing my screen again so that I can see the comments in the chat. So thank you very much all. So indeed, we have seen different feedbacks. So Ramesh, you mentioned something, and maybe that's a typo, but I'm not sure what is HOD's introduction. Can you clarify? Or that you type maybe in the...
It is HOD's, head of the department's introduction.
Heads of department. Thank you. I was not familiar with that abbreviation. Thank you very much. Yes, great point. Indeed. Kimberly, most onboarding, the compliance training, that's also a very good point. In many cases as well, this is something that needs to be done, not only as we said in the panel, the administrative onboarding, the cultural, the social, the technical, but the compliance is also something that needs to happen. And as you said, it usually starts there, but it's not always the best way to introduce people and onboard them. That's brilliant. We had Jeff, who said that he has a very structured and organized onboarding process, and it looks indeed amazing with a presentation. So presentation to 25 leaders, a training deck with 127 pages, and 90-day process, again, as we mentioned in the panel. The computers are ordered and set up in advance, and that is also very key, and that is what we again mentioned in the panel earlier on. When you can start to involve your people before they join you in the organization, knowing their expectations, knowing if they have certain needs, you also can do things to ensure that this transition is smooth. And just by doing that, ordering the computers in advance so that when the person comes on board, either he or she has a desk where to sit and a computer, or if the person is working from home, can just pick up the computer, have their user ID and password provided, and then can start working from home. So this is very important, and it's awesome that you guys have thought about that. And
He wanted to make a comment. Go ahead, Wes, unmute yourself. Or Chris, no, sorry, it's Chris, my bad.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. How are you guys doing today on wonderful Wednesday?
We are good. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
I'm so humbled and honored to be here. Kevin Ward, thank you so much for sending this out to me. I greatly appreciate you, brother. Listen, I want to bring this to the table and everything like that. I want to get everybody's thoughts and insights on this. Number one, should we start leading with our humanity? And should we also, number two, start leading by permission rather than position? And I want to pose that question to everyone.
That is a great question. So let me start first to answer your first question. Should we start leading by you being more human? I would say a big yes to me. And that is one thing I've always tried to do when I manage all my teams, is always make sure that you put your people first. I always think of this quote who says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is really it. When people know that you are there to support them, to guide them, that you make sure you provide them with the right tools, with the right processes, with the right equipment, with the right support, whether it is you mentoring or coaching that person or having someone else mentor them, etc. They will know that they are in a safe environment. They will know they can trust you. And this is how they will go above and beyond what you've asked them. And that's how you as a team will achieve results and sometimes even exceed results. As I say, I've always done that with my teams. I've always led by example to try to tell them it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to disagree with me because I don't know everything. So please don't be afraid. And as you say, being human to me is key. To Kevin's point earlier on, being a servant leader is key. We are, of course, we have to have the vision, and we as leader have to show the way and guide people on what needs to be done. But actually, we are there for our teams, and a team is only as strong as the leader is, and a leader would be nothing without their team members. So that would be my answer for your first question, Chris. I don't know, Anton, Kevin, would you like to add something else on that first question?
I mean, it's something that, and it's not to say your statement's off. It's just, I've heard the statement of leading with humanity, putting the human first. What I want society to do is to go a step further and define what that looks like, right? Is to set up and is to train and educate leaders. What does that actually looks like? Which Human SOS Conference is ultimately the first R stab at it. But what do these actions look like versus just talking about feelings? And yes, I'm putting people first, but you're saying that, but then you're the person that's making them stay late and work, into the late hours of the night, burning them out, or you're the person that's calling them on weekends, right? Like, do our actions speak that? Not just that we care, do we actually show that?
Yeah, and as mentioned earlier, servant leadership, that's the foundation. And if we're operating from that foundation continuously, people, when I talk for servant leadership, people are going, oh yeah, pushover. No, some of the strongest people I know because of the depth of character are servant leaders. And when it's necessary to, as Anton pointed out, to show somebody love in another way, to say, no, that's wrong. And I'm going to help you figure out how to address it. Can't have all touchy-feely good stuff. Sometimes it's going to be the not so feel good moments where we say, I love you, but you're messing up here. But key here is the human side of it is, okay, I'll work with you to figure out how we get through this and grow through this. And so, yeah, the human, we call it human SOS. It's definitely a priority, but just keeping the balance between the human element in terms of the compassion, but there's got to be some truth in there too.
Yeah, Wes made a great comment. He says it's transforming managers into leaders, and that's exactly really true leaders, not managing things or managing people, but really managing things and leading people. That is what is important. Great comment, Wes. And Chris, sorry, can you repeat your second question?
My second question is, should we lead by permission rather than position. Because if we can start leading from that mindset, then we're not in a place of authority. And like that guy just said about management, who wants to be managed anymore? We need to have people to lead others and get them to where they need to go. And that's what my question was to you is, can we lead by permission rather than position?
That's a brilliant question. I would have to think a bit more about it, but my first reaction is, as you say, for me, a leader is someone who is going to take risks and who is not going to ask permission. Yes, in some cases, they may have to ask their senior leaders, their VP, their CEO, whatever, but generally they should be the ones who say, this is what we're going to do. And you know what, we're never going to fail, because either we're going to win, we're going to accomplish what we've set our minds to, or we're going to learn something, take the lessons, move on and do something else. So I think that is what to me a true leader is.
You know, bringing it back to onboarding a little bit with that statement, customization, right? With permission, customize things for each person, understanding that if he is receiving it, and allow them to take that information when possible in their way, right? I was just thinking about something as an example for you guys. Compliance training was brought up, right? Yes, compliance training has to be done, but there's different people. Some may want to say, hey, pay me my minimum wage or whatever. I'll go knock it out at home, so that way I can focus on more important things like social interaction while I'm at work within my first 2 weeks. Others may say, you know what, I don't have time at home. I got kids and I got stuff going on. I'd much rather take my paid hours and do it at work. So the point here is, ask them, we need to do this, but how would you like to see that done? And give them ability to give you permission to do it with them.
Well, see, Anton, it comes back down to this. If we get to know people on the front end and ask them what their strengths, talents, gifts, and mindsets are, and really get to know that first, then granted, hey, if I can be able to knock it out of home and that's your strength to do it, then go do it. And I truly believe that's what we need to do. We need to give the power back to people in what their natural gifts and talents have given them to be, and say, hey, I am gifted at that. I'm social media driven. I'm marketing driven, whatever that may be. And if we get to know that on the front end versus the back end, which what we have done for probably hundreds and hundreds of years, we are actually knowing after the fact when we should actually know before the fact. Because why do you want to end up guessing it? And then next thing you know, oh, I got it wrong, because after this such a certain amount of time, I lost that guy because I didn't get in touch with him. I didn't contact with him. And I think that's the thing we need to do. We don't need to have the guesswork at the front end. We need to end up knowing at the front end. And then if you have to guess later, it'd be that journey that you can say, hey, I can correct the course, be able to steer the ship. And if you can get everybody on that simple buy-in, then it goes right into their line of sight. It gets into their mindset and say, hey, I'm on board with this because it aligns with who I am and what I want to do. And I think that's a great way we need to move forward, not only as a human race, but
and V's going to talk about that. She's going to talk about invest up front or pay later. Exactly what you just said so well is going to be the focus of that, because that's what onboarding is all about. That's why earlier when we talked about it, I say I take my new hire and they're right here. Right. They're right under my wing for first 2 weeks. It's not just about me being there for them. It's me understanding them and knowing them so that I can be the best leader for them.
Yeah, and I would like to tie that in with the comment that Wes made a few minutes ago about the current situation we all have and having more and more people working virtually. I think one of the challenges that this situation has brought, and a change of mindset for some leaders, is that some, well, I wouldn't call even them leaders, but more managers, is that they were micromanaging their teams. But by having people working virtually, by empowering them, by trusting them that they can do a great job, then you can really see the strength of certain people. You can really use that to improve the teamwork and the team synergy. And to your point, Anton, the leader nowadays, it's even more critical that he or she regularly communicates with their team members, whether it is virtually or whether it is face-to-face. They need to have this constant communication, again, to make sure that people are supported the right way, that they have everything they need. If they have challenges, how me as a leader can I support them? Do they need another training, another person helping them, etc., etc. So really putting these skills into perspective, into the big puzzle, and really empowering people so that, again, the leader can really focus on his or her job, can develop his people further, and again, so that they can do their job the best way possible.
V, if
Great.
I might jump in on the leader question. Leaders by default in the roles generally have authority. Okay? And the key is, though, the balance is that if you're always operating in authority, or again, I'm getting into some of the leadership training I do, if you're always a commander, you're going to lose your team. You're going to demotivate, demoralize your team. So don't stay in a commander leadership role all the time. If you do, you're going to make a huge mistake. And so to Chris's comment, leading by permission, in other words, we have to earn the respect of the people and operate from that mode unless it's necessary, and we have to have the ability to move back and forth between the two styles, is to be able to go commander on people, because sometimes that's what it takes. So yeah, you got to have both. You can't, it's not either or. If you're an either or, you need more leadership training, just to be kind of blunt.
Yeah. No, Wes is making another great comment saying that generations Y and Z expect feedback versus boomers. Thank you, Kevin. Versus boomers and Gen X who were told to keep quiet and do their job. And that's what we did. So that's why he loves Gen X. Yes, exactly. The feedback is so important. And again, the customization, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. It's very good. And to Jeff's point, having a standard training is great so that you can get your people onboarding, but you need certain customization. You need to take your audience, to take your people into consideration and start with them. Who are they and what do they need? And as you rightly said, Wes, having a younger person on board is something completely different than having someone who's been on the market for 20, 30 years with lots of experience. So you need to interact with these people in a different way, even though you still need to train them on more or less the same things, but customization is key here. Great point.
Millennials changed the landscape in corporations. They did. I'm a millennial. I don't like my generation, by the way. I fit more with the older generation, but they have done that. That is such a good point. And Gen Z are continuing that. I think Gen Z is making it a little bit more about action, not just about how they feel about it. But those generations are the reason why this summit is happening, right? If they didn't start these conversations, we wouldn't start noticing these things. We wouldn't start going, wow, there is another way. Because boomers and, Xers, everybody was like, you just put your head down, you work, you retire, and then you're free. And then millennials came around, the .com era came around, and people were like, oh, there's something else out there. Let's check it out. And we got to keep exploring. We got to keep digging, because there's so much good on this other side of leading in a humanly sustainable way.
Absolutely. Great comment. I see some other people have joined us. Yagan, Kumar, another Yagan, thank you for joining us as well. Before I move on to the rest of my presentation, do you guys have any other comments or questions? No, I've seen as well comments from, I think that was Jeremy, who mentioned about the shadowing. That's also an excellent
there's
point
a comment,
as well.
V.
Okay.
Isaac wrote, can I add a word? I'm coming from an industry that is totally entrepreneurial. Nobody is an elected leader, and you should work your way up. People are extremely flexible and would accept bad leaders, but this is not the right way. People in leadership positions should feel that they might lose their position. What are your thoughts on that, V?
So
Can I read that again?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I am coming from an industry that it is totally entrepreneurial. Nobody is an elected leader, and you should work your way up. People are extremely flexible and would accept bad leaders, but this is not the right way. People in leadership positions should feel that they might lose their position.
Yeah, so there's many things that come to mind, but the thing I want to mention, and is related to your last sentence, is that indeed, for me, a true leader is the one who creates more leaders. So yes, they should be afraid to lose their position, and that would mean that they have been so good at developing their people that someone else will be able to continue the job they've been doing, and maybe doing it even better. So definitely, I agree. The entrepreneur spirit as well, and it's back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. For me, a leader is in a way an entrepreneur because they are ready to take risks. This is the characteristic as well that is very important. If people would keep on doing the same thing over and over again, there will not be any creativity anymore. There won't be any more innovations, etc. So this entrepreneurial spirit needs to be there. But again, as I say, it can only be done when the leaders make sure that their team members have a safe environment where they can provide feedback, when they can ask questions, when they can come up with new ideas, and therefore can take the risk of having their job being taken by someone else. So that would be my answer.
I say it a little different. I say, don't be afraid to lose your position. Be afraid to fail your purpose. And if you're putting one in front of the other, you need to think about, what are you really after? You need to advance yourself as a leader. You're not necessarily a bad leader. You just need to progress. And what I mean by that is, tomorrow we're going to talk about John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership, and I'll use that as an example in leadership development. But I'll just preface it and say, position is level 1. People listen to me because they have to. Then people listen to me because they want to. So that leader should ask, how do I get to that level 2 and further? Because failing purpose is way bigger deal than failing position.
Great point.
Is it fair to say, getting back around our onboarding conversation, that that's why leadership modeled during the onboarding process is important as well, so that people can really begin to understand the leadership piece and learn to work in that culture, including the freedom to have an entrepreneurial mindset as an employee.
Yeah, great point, Kevin. Yep, thank you.
There's another comment from Isaac. Isaac, switch to group comments, because you're only sending it to me, so I want to make sure we don't miss it. Because in the chat there, it says privately or to everyone. Select everyone when you're doing that, please. But the characteristics of an entrepreneur is that they look for independence more. And he said another character is that they have a true purpose to follow, and this is not money. But I don't think that's any different from employees. I think that sometimes we think that because employees, they don't want autonomy because they're employees. No, and people want autonomy, whether they're working for themselves or they're working for somebody else. They want to be able to do it in their way and put their stamp on it. So I don't know if it's necessarily different. And the same thing with purpose. Entrepreneurs are purpose driven, but if employees have a good leader, those employees would also be purpose driven.
I think here, part of what Isaac is noticing is a manager-only environment versus a manager-leader environment. A manager-leader environment it's not driven by control. It's driven by empowerment, freedom for folks. And as a leader of a team, I want them to be entrepreneurial. I want them to be creative. I want them to be and have initiative and so on. So yeah, again, the key is, don't manage people, manage things, lead people. And that's part of what we keep bringing out to the forefront. And that's one of the big pivots that's got to happen.
Absolutely. Great point. Thank you, guys. So I'm just going to now reshare my screen to continue the presentation. Oh, I see one more comment coming up from Wes. The culture also has to support individuals being leaders. True leaders will create effective followers who are encouraged and to go out on a limb with their thoughts and actions for the betterment of the organization. It promotes the we, not the me. Exactly, Wes. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Absolutely. Great point. So let me share my screen again to move back to the presentation. And as we said, and we discussed again the onboarding that you are preparing for your new employees is an investment. It's an investment on the future. It's you're investing now, or you may have to pay the price later. So it's really important to train your new hires. And we have discussed now here on what they need to be trained on. So we said it's critical that you not only train them on the basic stuff, but really on the organization, on your culture and the values. Values is something that I personally think is often underestimated, and by the new employees and by the companies. When you can have the best employee or the ideal candidate who will have the perfect skills you were looking for and the right experience and the motivation. But if his or her values are not aligned to those of your organization, sooner or later you will have a problem, because this employee will become more and more frustrated. He or she will be more and more stressed, meaning he or she will not perform as well as he could, and will end up being either burned out or depressed, and or in the end leave your company. So the values is something that is often, in my eyes, very underestimated. And I'm always telling people when they are asking me for advice on what to do if they look for a job, I obviously tell them the basic stuff about their CVs, their resume, their letters and their research, etc. But the values is something now that I mention every single time, because I was once in a situation where I was working in a bank in the IT department, and I loved it first because, as I said, I went to India, I set up team, I helped with the recruiting, interviewing, the communication, etc. I loved that part. But then after, I was back doing like normal stuff, and I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like the mindset of the bank. I had always been working in customer service where it was all about helping people, and being in the bank at that time was meaning really doing things for money. And that was a complete clash of my values. And that's how I ended up having a burnout. So the values should really be something that you need to identify as early as possible in the recruiting process, and making sure after, then once you have identified that candidate that fits your values, that you reinforce it in your onboarding so that people know what it really means, the values you're using and how you're using that in putting that into practice. Obviously, the onboarding is also on the job, on the tools, on the policies and procedures, on the meetings that people need to attend, on the reports they need to deliver, etc., etc. And on the people, who is who. I saw two comments as well. I think it was from Ramesh and Vijay, were saying it's important as well when you have a new employee that they not only meet their team members, but that they also meet the stakeholders, the people they are going to work with, and their business leaders. They need to know why they're doing things and who for. And again, by having this first initial contact, this makes things so much easier for the new employee, because he can put ideally a face to a name. He knows why the person is requesting certain information, and that makes the whole experience, the whole transition easier. So very important not to forget in the onboarding program to make sure that the new hire will meet their key stakeholders, the business leaders they're going to interact with. And finally, one more thing I forgot to mention is that obviously, even though, like Jeff example, who has created a complete onboarding training, it's very important that, again, you customize it. You need to have certain things that you need to train anybody in your organization, as I say, especially if it's about around the culture, the organization, the values, etc. But you also need to customize it. And in my the example I always give is, if you hire an analyst, you will want this person to meet certain people, and the people he or she will meet would be different than, for instance, if you've hired a director. They are dealing with people at different level, and so they need to interact with people at different level, and so they need to know who they're going to interact with. So make sure that you customize your onboarding as much as possible, that you have the standard part, let's say, but that is also customized to meet their needs and to meet your needs as well, so that after, again, it's a win-win for everybody. So I'm going to stop again here for 5 minutes because we are going to enter the last part of today's session. We are going to talk about team synergy. So I would like to give you all 5 minutes again to do a quick break so that you can again go away from the computer, take a drink, or
Real quick, V, I just want to leave people with this thought because we haven't mentioned that. I think it's important to mention customer onboarding. When you onboard a new hire, if you're like in an industry that does a lot of service or especially sales with large contracts, make sure that those new hires are introduced to your key customers. Sometimes it's a really important thing because it's good for them, but it's also, we have to remember that sometimes we have to protect the company. So if we're bringing on a new hire and we didn't tell them like, hey, be careful, this is our golden goose, and that new hire said something or did something to cost us that's on us as leaders, because we're bringing on a new person into our environment. So we got to introduce them to our customers as well.
Yes, I'm going to touch that afterwards, Anton. Thank you for
Sweet.
bringing that up.
Sorry, I didn't know.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Thank you. So guys, 5 minutes break. It's 5 past on my clock. So let's meet at 10 past. And for our Indian colleagues, that will be 10 to the hour. So see you in 5 minutes, guys.
And remember, while we're on break, feel free to type comments in the chat, and we will be monitoring that and certainly want to make sure that your engagement is included.
Yes. Thank you, Kevin. So guys, we are almost ready to start. I hope you are all coming back for our last part of day 2, which is the end of onboarding. So please, again, feel free to ask questions or comments. I also have some part at the end for additional questions or comments, but just in case, don't hesitate to jump on the chat or even unmute yourself. Great. So let's continue. I think it's 10 past at my clock. Yes, it is. So let's continue. So now we have seen what are the challenges and what it looks like, but so how can we make that work? Or how do we apply these things that we've discussed? And this is where the team synergy will come through complementary strengths if you have done your onboarding well. So the first thing we need to make sure is when we have the onboarding, and as we just said, is that have a customized full onboarding plan for each of your new hire. And one thing I mentioned is including regular one-on-one with each of them, one-on-ones, and including your new team members in your team meetings as soon as possible. These regular one-on-ones especially will not only allow you to get to know your team member, but also for them, it will allow them to ask you questions, to provide you feedback, to see if they are struggling, if they need additional support. Maybe they're going to ask you a question you didn't think of, and you will say, oh, but that means maybe you could talk to that person. So really make sure you have this regular one-on-one, and it's even more critical now, as Wes said, with the COVID situation. We have more and more people working at home, and they are even more isolated, and it's even more challenging because they cannot go and meet their team members or their colleagues like they would do if they were working in the same office. So you need to make sure that there is this ongoing, this regular communication with yourself, and set up a plan so that they can talk to their peers, to their colleagues, so that they know that they are not alone, they are not just thrown away somewhere, and that they will have to do their job by themselves. They are part of a team, and they need to feel part of the team. This is how you can make sure that your onboarding is humanly sustainable, by really including your people, by ensuring this constant communication. And your one-on-ones, they may not have to last an hour. If you have a big team, and 1 hour may be a lot, but I would say, especially with your new hires, that 1 hour is well spent, because again, this is how you're going to start to build trust. This is how you're going to get to know each other. You will know your team member will start to get to know you, to find out what type of manager, what type of leaders you are. And they will see whether they can ask you questions, they can come to you with their challenges, if they can get the support that they need. So really, really important that aside from the customized full onboarding plan, whether, again, as we said, it's training people on the tools, on the policies and procedures, the values, etc. You also have this part regarding communication, because this is really, really critical. Another thing I would like to add about the customized full onboarding plan, and it's part of this customization, especially if you're working internationally and if you have like offices in different countries, you can still have, let's say, a standard onboarding plan and still be able to customize. And by that, I mean, you can ensure that you have 70 or 80% of your onboarding training plan that is the same across the different countries. And then you leave 20, 30% of that country specific. So like Anton mentioned earlier on, if there are certain things they need to know about certain customers in a certain country, this is where you would teach people or train people on what they need to pay attention to, whether they need to use certain tools. Like when I was working in Amazon, for instance, at the time I was there was Amazon Logistics that was only in the UK, but that was not in France or in Italy, Germany or Spain. So the people we were training in the UK had this Amazon Logistics specific that was not delivered in the other countries. But the rest was kind of standard. They were getting the same onboarding training plan about the culture, the way Amazon was working, the website, the customers who were there in general, how about the policies and procedures, the tools, etc. But there was that 20-30% of things that were really country specific, and you can still ensure a standardized experience with some customization in there. The other thing you also need to make sure is that you give enough time for people to familiarize themselves with the tools, the policies, the procedures, getting to know who is who. As we discussed in the panel, usually it takes about 90 days for people to come up to speed with what they need to know, find out who is who and how to interact with each other. But also one thing you need to keep in mind that as everybody is different. We said we have introverts versus extroverts. So some people may be a bit more shy in asking questions. And again, to my point, especially if you're working with people from different countries or different cultures, you also need to take that into consideration. In some countries, it is not custom to ask questions, to provide feedback, or to even say that you disagree. I know, again, when I was working and I was setting up the team in India, I know my Indian colleagues at the beginning, they were afraid, they were hesitant to tell me something. And I was telling them, please ask me questions, give me your opinion, give me your feedback. And it's okay, because first of all, I don't know everything, and you guys are the experts in the area. So maybe there are things I forgot, or maybe there are things I don't know. So please don't be afraid. So you need to encourage people. You need to create this open culture that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to provide feedback. And again, some people may do that straight away. You also have some cultures who are very direct. Like when I used to live in the Netherlands, people are very direct and they're going to ask questions and tell you what they think straight away. But you have some other countries or cultures that where people will need more time to tell you what they think. So you need to provide that safe environment so that they know that they can trust you as a leader and that they're not going to be punished to give their feedback or ask questions. So it's very, very important.
We've got a comment from
Yes.
Isaac. He says, you don't build trust by others until you learn to trust them. I know about many managers who refuse to let their employees working from home because they couldn't micromanage them. Now they have no choice because of COVID. Some manage to adapt and some are struggling.
Exactly. No, a great point, Isaac. It's exactly it. And I can imagine for, as you say, the managers who were micromanaging, they probably have had a tough time with the current situation. But I think when you have built this environment of trust, when you tell your people, I trust you, I know you can do a good job, I know that if there is a problem, you're going to come to me. People, everybody wants to do a good job, and by building that trust, then again, it doesn't matter where they work. If they work next to you in the office, or they are in another office or in another country or working from home, people should be able to do the same. And that's what I've said before. I've always done that with my team, and we've achieved our results, and they went above and beyond just because I was trusting them and empowering them to do their job and not micromanaging every single task they were doing. So great point, Isaac. Thank you. And the other thing that is important is also to, as we said, you can be the mentor, but you should, to me, I think also you can assign them a mentor or a buddy to help them getting up to speed. The reason is there are different reasons for that. The first is that, again, because you are the manager or the leader of that person, he or she may be a bit afraid at the beginning. He or she doesn't know you. While if you put someone, a buddy or a mentor, he or she may be more inclined to ask questions or provide feedback. So that's the one reason. The second reason is, again, you as a leader, you need to make sure you develop your people further. And by assigning someone as a mentor, you provide the opportunity to your new hire to develop himself or herself better with someone else, but you also provide that person who has become the mentor to also show another side of what they can do, of their potential. You are delegating things, and you show as the leader that you are developing your people, and you will maybe find out that this person was a great mentor, and maybe in the future can be a mentor again, and maybe be your backup when you are in a meeting or sick or on holiday, etc. So by assigning a mentor or a buddy, it helps the new hire getting up to speed more quickly, but also again have someone else they can trust, they can start building a relationship. And as I say, you are helping the other person to develop themselves. And another great point I didn't mention here, but that Jeremy mentioned, is the shadowing. Obviously, this also helps through the onboarding and getting people up to speed. If they can shadow their colleagues, if they can sit next to them, looking at what they're doing, who they're talking to, how they're working, how they're using their tools. This is usually great because people first see what people are doing, and then they can switch. The person they were shadowing can become the one who is going to look, and the person then feels more confident to answer a call or to do a certain task because they have someone next to them that is shadowing them and looking at them and helping them and guiding them. So by having all these bits and pieces together, this is how you create team synergy. As I mentioned earlier on, again, by ensuring that you have this regular communication, that you're including your new hires in your team meetings from the beginning, you show your team member, your new hire, that he or she is part of a team, but you also show your existing team members that there is a new person on board and that the dynamics may be a bit different for a certain period of time. Because again, as soon as you have a person in a team, it's a change, not only for the new hire, but for you as a leader, also for the other team members. So by really making sure that the new hire is included in these team meetings as early as possible is a great way, again, for people to get to know each other, to know what is the person's strength and how they can help the whole team. And again, by building that on a regular basis, especially again, virtually, the team meetings still need to happen, and ideally via video like we're having now. This really helps building, again, this trust, this team building, and again, helping the team move forward and achieve the goals that they need to. So really, really important to do that. Another thing I would like to add, and it's especially if people are working internationally. Again, we now live in a global world, and as you know, before you may have hired someone in your area, working in your town, but you may now have to work with people internationally, have teams in different countries or different regions, or even your customers that are in different countries or different regions. So when you are onboarding your new hires, it's very important that you include a cultural awareness module or training. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means it may be for someone that is the first time they are going to work internationally. Maybe you're recruiting someone who's just out of college or university who has never worked before, and suddenly this person has to work with people in different countries. That can be an example. Another example, if someone, again, has been working only nationally, and now you've hired this person to work with your international customers. Or maybe you've hired someone from another team, and now the person has to deal with people from other countries or cultures. So really make sure you include a cultural awareness module and training. And what does that mean? That means you need to explain them what it means to work internationally, the things you were taking for granted before, or that your new hire was taking for granted before, may no longer be applicable now. And by that, I mean, again, just the time. As we know now, for some of us, for me, it's late in the afternoon, our Indian colleagues in the evening. For you guys in the US, it's still daytime. So taking into account the different time zones, that if you schedule a meeting, don't schedule it in the middle of the night for some of your colleagues or some of your clients. Make sure you take that into consideration. Speaking about yes, sorry. Yes.
We've got a comment from
Mhm.
Wes. He says, understanding cultural training through Geert Halstead 60 cultural comparison model.
Yes.
Young and Hammer's problem solving and communication styles is eye-opening concerning why one statement or question may be very innocent in one culture versus creating tension in another culture. As
Exactly.
as our teams and communities become multicultural, there's a greater emphasis to understand these differences.
Exactly. Excellent point. Yeah, Wes. Yes, Rechtofstede is a great one to refer to. And to me, that's also why when I train people as well on what it means to be an international leader, I really spend time on that communication aspect, because as I said, some just basic things, some expressions, and Kevin and Anton know sometimes they say things and now they're asking me, do you understand that, or have you heard that expression before? And I really appreciate, because things that you guys in the US may use on a regular basis are not obvious for people like me whose language is not, I'm not native English speaker. So some expressions I don't know, I've never heard before. So always take your audience into account, whether they are your new hires, your team members, or your customers. Be careful of the expressions you use. Be careful of using humor as well. Again, you may think you may be making a joke and you may think it's funny, but for someone else it may not be funny. And because maybe it's being offensive to them, or maybe because they just don't have the background. Maybe you're referring to, let's say, a TV program, something that is very famous in your country, but then outside of your country, this is not known and everybody is laughing except the person you wanted to make laugh. So really important to not assume, to really take your audience into consideration with the words you use, the expressions you use, the humor you want to do, the abbreviations you use. Ramesh, the one you gave me, that was a new one to me, the heads of division, etc. These are the abbreviations that may be common to some people, and even you don't need to work internationally. Someone may have used a certain abbreviation in a company, and this abbreviation may have a complete different meaning in another company. So really be mindful of all the things that you thought were obvious to you or that you took for granted, because as soon as you go internationally, things are completely different. And especially when people are not native English speakers, this is where you have to be extra careful.
Another
yes.
comment, this is
Yes.
from Isaac. He
Yes.
says, you'll never be able to master diverse cultures. Be humble and admit your weakness and ask your people for guidance. This is extremely helpful. I did it in Japan and was very successful.
Exactly. Great point, Isaac. Exactly. Ask questions, do your research, ask people. That was the same for me when first time I went to India. I asked my colleagues, how do people are dressed over there, especially women, and how do I greet people, and how do I say hello, and all these type of things, because you want to try to show that you are as open-minded as possible, that you try to fit in the culture of your host, and that you don't want to offend people, but you want to respect them as much as possible. So yes, indeed, ask questions, do your research. This is really, really important.
But you don't have to solve it on your own either, and not even in that way. You have people like you, V, right? Like, let's do a little bit of a plug here and say, if you're struggling with this kind of stuff, like, outsource it. Bring on an expert, bring on a coach, and say, hey, here's what my team looks like. Here's our current team dynamic. Here's the different cultures we represent. What kind of stuff should I really pay attention to? What are my red flags, and what kind of conversation should I be a little bit more cautious? You're not going to give them every answer, but at least you can kind of prep these people, you know, and get them in the right mindset when they're going to those conversations.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's one of the values that we bring as an organization, is to be able to look at things from a different angle And good practice is sometimes you need outside eyes to look at things to really begin to find the right responses, because even internally we get so internally focused that so we're here. We want to work with organizations and individuals to really help overcome some of this.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yes. Another thing that's really important, and it's for your customers, again, some things that may be obvious for you in your country may not be so obvious for another customer in another country. And here I want to take two examples. One was when, again, I was working in Amazon, and I remember we were implementing something new, and we heard that people in the Philippines were not used to deal with credit cards. And what we had implemented is that people needed to pay with credit card. And again, in Europe, it's everybody is familiar with credit card. I know in America, in the US, Canada, etc., also people are familiar. But in some countries, when you have customers, you're serving customers internationally, make sure, double check that what you think is obvious for you is the same somewhere else. So again, don't assume you know everything. Ask questions, to Isaac's point. The other thing again is with the greeting of people. In English, it's easy. We say you. You can be for one person, but it can also be for several people. And whether you are being formal or informal, you use the you. But me being French, if I talk to someone, a new customer, a potential client or stakeholder, whatever, and I'm only meeting that person for the first time, or even if I've met that person for the first time, I first will never approach him or her by his or her first name. I will never say, hey, Jean. No, I would say, hey, Mr. Smith, for instance. That's the first thing. And the you in French, we have two. We have the tu for when people know each other. And then we have the vous. The vous is when you speak to a group of people, or the polite ways. The same in German, the same in Dutch, or in Italian, you also have these differences. But in English, it makes it easy. But if you don't want to offend people, you show them your respect. I should never, and I would never say to someone that I've meeting for the first time or talking to for the first time, because I know this is key for failure. The person will say, well, who do you think you are? You're saying to me and you're using my first name. We've never met before. So again, be very mindful when you work internationally. Don't think you know everything. Really do your research, ask people questions, and start with your audience. Try to know their customs, try to understand how they work, so that you can, again, have a better connection, and you can start building trust and respect. I see, Chris, you're having a question. Go on.
Yes. I want to pose this to you guys. Should we, as leaders, surround ourselves with people who actually know more than what we do, and also create that environment, not only from a culture aspect dynamic, but also from that human dynamic, to which what connects us all is our very humanity, that we are putting people in positions of success that not only becomes replicatable and duplicatable, but we're surrounding those people with people who know what they know, and they know it far better than not only us, but probably anyone else. Should we do it in that kind of way, that we actually are surrounding ourselves with people who know what they know and know it very well?
My answer is yes. That's why you have experts. You have experts in your team. Yeah, like in the different teams I had people who were very skilled in Excel and SQL and doing all these macro and the reports and etc. I had the vision. I was telling them, this is what I need, this is what I like to have, but I would never have been able to do what they were doing, because they were so great at what they are doing, and they were thriving. They loved what they were doing. If they had told me, okay, Virginie, you do it, and we change job, I would have felt miserable, because I would have been struggling. It would have cost me at least 2, 3, 4 times the time they used to. And they probably would have struggled as well, because they were not so comfortable with talking to people or managing people. They were really into their reports. So to me, a leader needs to surround himself or herself with people that know more than they know, because again, a leader is as good as his teams. And if you have strong people in your team, that just shows shows that you are a strong leader, that you, again, you know, to Kevin's point earlier on, you are humble, you show that you don't know everything, you know that you need your team around you, and that you you are nothing if you don't have the strong people around you. So that would be my answer.
My answer is in action. Look around who I surrounded myself with, right? I'm the youngest person on this team. These two are well more experienced than me, well more knowledgeable. They have strengths that are so much better than mine. And if I just went and surround myself with people that are weaker than me, what would be the point? Like, what? That's the problem with a lot of leaders. We were so worried about our position. I mentioned this already before. Wrong leaders put position over purpose. And for that reason, to protect their position, they're trying to surround themselves with people that won't take that position. And in turn, nothing ever happens. But if you're actually chasing purpose and what you're trying to accomplish, then you're going to surround yourself with people that are going to help you accomplish the purpose. And by that, you're going to have a better team and everything's going to be awesome. And with the onboarding, once again, tying that in, if you did a good job as a leader onboarding, you hired people that are potentially better than you. Let their strengths show. Don't make them be average. Let them shine through those strengths, and hopefully they become better than you. Shouldn't our team be better than us because we taught them everything that we know, and then we allowed their strength to shine on top of what we already built for them?
Yeah, as a leader, you're always not only looking at what they currently have, look at the potential, and you should be building towards that potential. And if that potential is beyond what your capability is, no harm, no foul, because at some point you need somebody to be a successor. And the greatest legacy as a leader is someone that can come in and go beyond what you were able to do, and then you can move on and be a leader in a new environment to do what you can do best, and so on. It's a part of the whole system of human sustainability.
Yeah. Great question, Chris. Thank you for asking, and thank you guys for jumping in. The last point I'd like to make, if you are working internationally as well, and especially if you or your team members are traveling, also provide them information on business etiquette. This is also something that I see is often underestimated or even completely forgotten, but it can help the transition and the onboarding of your people so much easier. Just show them, give them some information on, again, how to greet people, in what order should you address people. Again, in some cultures, like Isaac said, in Japan or in Asia, in some countries, the hierarchy is very important, and not everybody should address the CEO of a company over there. So you need to know in which order you can talk, or you should talk, the way you present your business card. For women as well, the way you dress in some countries as well, you need to cover your shoulders or not show your legs, etc. So know this information up front. And I know this can be overwhelming to have all these additional pieces of training and of information in your onboarding program. And if you are a small company, you may not have either the time or people who are able to train that. But as Anton and Kevin said, either outsource it or refer people. There are so many websites, like also Wes mentioned a book from Gert Hofstede. There are so many information out there that people can look up, but provide them with links to where they can find the information. There are great websites out there, videos on YouTube, etc., where if you cannot provide this information to your people internally, at least refer them to some websites where they can get the information, or outsource it to a company that can help you with that. So very important part of the onboarding as well, aside from the administrative onboarding, the technical, social, and cultural onboarding. This part, focusing on the international aspect, I think it's very important, and it's often forgotten or underestimated. So, are there any questions before I'm going to close this session and this day, actually? Any more questions or comments from anyone?
The only thing Isaac commented, and we've kind of addressed, is the idea of not bringing in external help. And certainly we encourage people to be able to work internally, but I have to say been doing this a long time, a lot of different environments, and there are many times where I'm too close and I need people from the outside to help me with perspective, and that have I give them intentionality to say, hey, you're doing this wrong. And sometimes our internal situations may or may not be conducive. So I appreciate, trying to address things internally. No problem, but I would suggest that there is wisdom in considering an outside help, even, even if it's not a paid person, sometimes we need that outside perspective. So just a thought.
And bringing in the concept of human sustainability, right? Don't wear your people out trying things over and over and failing, right? Your people after a while start going, what are we really doing? We keep shifting direction, we keep shifting course, and it was just not getting anywhere. And sometimes bringing external help is good, but what I wrote in the comment, what kind of external help, right? Sometimes you may need a consultant, somebody that comes in and tells you exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and when to, breathe, for all that matters. But maybe you need a coach where your team may never even know that you're working with somebody. This is just done one-on-one. V sits down with you and, goes over the things that you need to be prepared for, the way that you need to think. That's really what the good coach does, is helps you to teach you how to think and how to organize your information, how to be prepared for things. And everything is coming from you instead of it coming from somebody else. So you become the people's champion. That's one of the biggest things that Prospective Force wants to do for leaders, is to make you be the people's champion, where people look at you as their hero, right? Like, that's what I want every leader to be people's heroes.
Yeah, when I approach someone as a coach, I'm not trying to tell them how to do things my way. My goal is to help them find the best way within their situation, their personality, their total picture, how to apply different principles that's going to help them become better at what they do, reaching their potential so that they can lead others into their potential.
And Isaac makes another comment. He says it's always a problem, a shortage of time. And that leads me to what I wanted to kind of propose we close with, is how can we be more intentional with our time? Because I think that we end up with shortage of time when it comes down to onboarding, because we check boxes. We have these processes that are just, hit repeat, and they are time consuming, but the return on investment ends up being really low. And when I think about intentionality of time, I always think about kids as an analogy. I look at a sideline and there's two parents. One parent's there, they're with their kid, they're watching the game, they're yelling, they're cheering. Another parent's there, but they're on their phone, they're distracted, they're not really there. The reality is that kid would take that parent being there 15 times instead of the full hour on the phone while they were fully present. So I would just challenge us to find, how can we be more intentional as leaders with onboarding with that time? So that way we don't have to maybe give as much, but the time that we do gives us the most bang for our buck.
Yeah.
Well, we need to let V get back. We kind of jumped in there.
Oh, I thought you said you were closing.
Yeah, but I'm before I'm closing, I wanted to
sorry.
check if people are questions. No, that's okay, no problem. Don't worry, I'm almost done. So Gnago, you guys are making great points. Thank you. So what I want to close it is that, remember, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And it's about thinking and planning about the long term, and to your point, Anton, as well, how we use the time. So ideally, leaders, they are not waiting until they really need someone urgently. They are thinking ahead and thinking, okay, what role will I need in 1 year, in 2 years, in 5 years, and start to think in that direction, how they can find that person, either internally by developing their own people, or externally by trying to attend events and promote that in schools, etc. So it's very important to think and plan long term. Another thing I'd like to remind people again is connecting your people and your culture, the culture of your company. or your organization, but also your culture as a country, and making sure, again, if you're working with people from different cultures or different countries, they can connect with your organization and that they can share the values and understand their vision. So this is also a very important point I would like to remind everybody. And another thing that is also very helpful is that by being transparent and also prepare them for what is coming, that they may hit the wall, that they may be stressed at the beginning, and to tell them again that it is okay. It can be so overwhelming with all the information they're going to get in the next few weeks or months, and that it is okay to feel like, oh my God, have I done the right choice? I'm stupid, I feel stupid, I'm not going to make it, etc. Reassure them and tell them that it's normal. Again, give them a chance to provide feedback and to ask questions. That is also one thing that will help them, again, be as productive as possible and continue developing themselves and thriving. So that is something to remind or to remember as well. And as I say, ask for feedback. This is your chance again to ask your new hires if they liked your onboarding, and if there are things that you could improve. Because again, by getting this feedback, and as we know, feedback is a gift, by getting that feedback, this will allow you to continuously improve, to take the feedback of your latest new hires and to put it into your training, so that the next person who is going to come on board will have, let's say, the improved version. And as I think, can't remember who wrote that comment, I think it was Jeff, who said we can always become better. And yes, the more you do it, the better you will be. But there is nothing that is perfect, and we all know the world is changing, so there are always things we can take into consideration and that we can implement in our onboarding plan. So ask for feedback, not only to ensure that your new hire is ready to go, and we're going to discuss the development side tomorrow with Anton, who is going to give us this time a presentation, but also ask for feedback about your onboarding training, so that then again you can improve it for the future. So that was it for today. As I said, today we saw again what is it putting the square peg into a round hole? What are the challenges we may face when we think about onboarding? How onboarding is important, and that it's actually an investment. It's better to invest upfront than paying later. Again, when you invest and you make sure that your new hires have a great onboarding, it will stick to them. I read a book recently from Ron Kaufman about excellent customer service, and I can't remember the title now, I'm stuck there, sorry. But he said that when people get a great customer service training, that will stick, and this is how they will deliver a great customer experience. And in the end, that is why you're doing it, because you want to make sure your customers are happy or happiest, and that they keep on coming back. So investing in your people is an investment where you will get the return later. And if you're not doing this right, as I say, you will pay later, because your people will either be demotivated, be stressed, and will want to leave, and will leave you if you have not done the right job and not supporting them the right way. And finally, the team synergy, very important to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's strength is used, so that again, you have a great team with people who are better than you, and you can achieve your goals and even exceed them. So what's next, as I say, for tomorrow? Tomorrow we are going to go through the same presentation style. We are going to start with the keynote that I will deliver myself. We'll have after a panel discussion, and then Anton will talk about the development of our new employees. So we are going to see that we should not just hire them and leave them alone. We're going to see how to foster the entrepreneurial spirit that we mentioned today, thanks to Chris, and we're going to talk about career development. So as a summary, was just to remind you, as we said, we are Prospective Force. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us at admin@prospectiveforce.com or follow us on LinkedIn as well. Follow Prospective Force, join our movement, Human SOS. This is really important. We think that the future is about people and making sure, especially with the year we've all been through, now more than ever, people need to feel that they are being cared for and that they are not just check boxes or just numbers, but that they are people and that they can thrive and do a great job and being supported and being motivated. And for those of you who don't know me, don't hesitate as well to follow me on LinkedIn on my profile. So want to thank you guys again. If there are any last questions or comments, we'll be more than happy to take them. And otherwise, we are going to see you all tomorrow. Any last questions, comments?
Just be sure if you want to invite people for tomorrow, that we would be more than happy to have new people join in, and we can help them get caught up. And so just please go register at the website, and that would be great, because there's going to be some additional communication with some benefits and things for those that have registered beyond what you've been able to enjoy on the live part. So
And just thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
I get so energized from you showing up and wanting to listen to us run our mouth for 4 hours about a topic that may not make you rich, but it's a topic that is really dear and close to all of our hearts. And I'm really thankful and grateful for your time.
very much so.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
And
you.
we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.